right, today is November 23rd, 2021, and is our City Council work session calling to order. And just as a notification of the public, that the City Council may vote to go into executive session for legal advice on any of the agendized items. Roll call, please.
Mayor Deasy.
Here.
Vice Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Councilmember Aslan.
I'm here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Salas.
Present.
Councilmember Shimoni.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Aslan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Thank you. And Councilmember McCarthy, our mission statement, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor, would you mind doing our land acknowledgement? I do have it here if you need a copy. Cool.
It would be my pleasure. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of the area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. With that, we are down to agenda item 4, which is our general public participation. I do have one card here, Liz Hewitt, if you'd like to come down.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. My name is Liz, and I'm here representing the Downtown Business Alliance. We are very excited. We are about to kick off our holiday season. As you know, we put on some fantastic events with our partnerships with some of the city divisions. Y'all heard me?
Yeah, we heard you, but if you could actually start over just so that the public tuning in online can hear as well. I'd appreciate it.
My name is Liz, and I'm here representing the Downtown Business Alliance. We are here, we're about to be kicking off our holiday season, and as y'all know, we put on some fantastic events in partnership with some city divisions that we work closely with. We especially work with Parks and Rec events, Streets, Discover Flag, Beautification, and the city manager. And our upcoming event is going to be December 4th. You may know Governor Ducey declared Flagstaff to be Arizona's winter wonderland, and we are taking that to heart. So we are turning Heritage Square into a wonderland, and we're inviting all of you to come participate. It's going to be a free, family-friendly event, December 4th in the afternoon, starting about 3, and we would absolutely love for all of y'all to come join us, as well as sharing with your audiences that we are open to local residents and visitors to Flag. It's one of those events we want everyone to participate in. And also, just to make you aware, New Year's is right around the corner somehow. So we are doing 3 pine cone drops this year. We're doing a New Year's Eve for the little ones, so it's going to be a sparkling cider toast and a pine cone drop at 12 noon, and then again at 10 p.m. and midnight. And again, we would absolutely love for all of y'all to come join us to celebrate. Great examples of our partnership working with the city. We work hand in hand. We put a lot of effort. As you can see, the square is beautiful already, and that's thanks in large part to our city partners. So again, extending a personal invitation to all of you to come join us to celebrate the holidays and to share with all of your audiences, both local and outside of Flagstaff, to come celebrate with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz. All right, and we don't have any electronically for general public participation, do we? All right. Just wanted to confirm. That brings us down to agenda item 5, which is our Flagstaff Pulliam Airport paid parking program.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I'm Barney Helmick, your Flagstaff Pulliam Airport Director, and I have Rick Tatter here with us this evening. He'll be assisting me with this while I pull my mask up and down all night long. What we're providing here tonight is going to be an informational This has been presented to the council before. There's a few additional things we're bringing to you, but in preparation for some of the future council member meetings, there will be a sequence listing of what we're going to do by dates toward the end of the program. And if you wouldn't mind waiting till the end for any questions, I'd appreciate that. The current existing parking lot has 385 spaces, and it was built in 2 phases. The lower section near the terminal, and I don't think this shows, yeah, it does. This is great. This lower section here, close to the terminal, was built in the first phase when the terminal was built in 1993. The outer section was built about 5 to 8 years later. They were all built with grant money. So by receiving grant money for that, we could not charge paid parking. That's one of the reasons why you're just now starting to see the paid parking program be coming forward. So we had to wait for the 20-year span for those grants to expire. In 2007, there was a master plan done that proposed this location, and it also said that we would be good until 2025 for the amount of parking spaces we had. As you can see, we far exceeded that. There's a couple things that happened to that. We do have additional air service that brought in a double amount of our passengers, way ahead of anticipated planning. We also have some users of our parking spaces that are transient, that do not have a reason to be out there. And those things we hope to be able to control with some of the paid parking. These are some of the benefits of the paid parking program. It'll be expansion of parking spots. We'll reduce the transient parking that parks there just because it's free. We're going to add electric vehicle charging stations, both that we're putting in right now and in the future in the existing parking lot, or in the new parking lot, excuse me. We'll be able to cost recover our capital investments, and we'll be able to support the ongoing parking operations and maintenance, which we'll show that plan in a few steps later. And it will also support overall airport needs and reduce and eliminate the reliance on the general fund. We are an enterprise program, but due to increased costs through the years, we've not been able to keep up with that, and we're hoping that this program will be able to cover those costs and make us fully self-sufficient. This is what we're looking at for the new lot, which is over in this project site. You'll see off to the side there. It'll be bringing 413 spaces. And just to show that we follow the same city codes as everybody else, there have been some recent changes that required internal walkways that were concrete, that separate from just a painted stripe on the parking lot, and we will be putting those in. Along Fulham Drive, you're going to see a headlight wall. It's about a 3 foot high or a little bit higher than that, so that when cars are parked there, the headlights will not blind drivers when they come by. You're also going to see in this general area right here a bus cutout. Even though we're still a ways before we make a decision on whether bus service comes there, we want to be prepared for it as is now. There's also a 8 foot long or 8 foot wide sidewalk that proceeds around to the existing sidewalk. On that, there'll be some artwork on the foot trail rail system sidewalk like you see. And there'll be medallions embedded into the concrete that identify these art things that have been vetted through the beautification program. And then we will be installing, there's 2 entryways into the parking lot, an entryway and exit here, and an entryway and exit over on Kitty Hawk. They'll also be installing paid parking in all of our parking lots there. Now, there is an existing lot that we're calling overflow right now, which is actually the rental car of the future and employee parking. That will be taken out of the system and will be part of the program for our upkeep for the future. If you've been out to the airport recently, there is a concrete slab going in right in this area right here. That's going to be 6 electric vehicle charging stations. We're working with APS on that project right now. That project's running a little bit behind because of making sure the contractual agreements between us and APS are acceptable by both legal teams. But the slabs there, we're just waiting for APS to put their charging stations in. Like I said, there'll be 6 of those. One of them, I believe, is handicap, maybe 2. And then In the future, we'll be able to add electrical vehicle charging stations in the new lot and in our rental car lot when we get it completed. Future developments with this will be the main lot. Next year, we'll start resurfacing, cleaning up the curbs, taking some of the islands that have been damaged out and maybe add a little bit more parking in there. And then in the next phase, this lot will be done the same way. And the extended maintenance will go on into the rental car lots. As part of the research on this, we had our staff look out to several different airports. You'll see many of the regional airports listed here. I did want to talk briefly about the first two because they're listed as free. Prescott Regional Airport is part of what they call Essential Air Service Program, where the federal government subsidizes their cost for their air service. So they do not have some of the costs that we have, and they still are able to generate some revenue for that, and that allows them to continue the free air service. Laughlin Bullhead is a little bit different than the others in that they don't have daily scheduled air service, but they do a lot of charter work. Companies that fly in junkets for just the weekends for gambling junkets. But the rest of these are airports very similar to ours, and you'll see the price ranges that range very similar to what we're going to be looking at for our program. The benefits of the paid parking program: it'll have a new lot, will increase our existing inventory and provide for, like I said, the bus turnout. Future expansion of electric vehicle charging. New bicycle path lanes going around the Pelham Drive in that area. And it will give us increased revenue from the paid parking, which will pay for the construction costs and help with ongoing and operational and maintenance needs, and we'll show those a little bit later here in the program. Now I'm going to turn it over to my sidekick, Rick Tatter.
Thank you, Barney. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. Rick Tatter, Management Service Director and City Treasurer. I'm going to go through kind of the cost and the financial plans that we've put together related to the paid parking program. The first portion of the discussion is the cost related to bring this expanded facility to our airport for future use. We're investing about $4.9 million to add this parking lot, put the upgrades in necessary, and develop a really first-class parking location on our airport, as well as the equipment to put in for the paid parking system, are all within this $4.9 million. So we're looking for ways to cost recover these types of expenses. As you put in new facilities, there are increased costs to manage these types of programs, and these are some of the items we've researched and penciled out as far as the need of ongoing resources. We are looking at parking staff. We are looking to partner with Park Flag and their team to provide parking services out at our airport, and we look forward to that partnership, and they will build the airport for those services provided. There will be increased utility costs related to landscaping, lighting, and so forth that we need to bring forward. Snow management is a big increase for both parking lots. With paid parking, there is additional needs that we will have in both lots, but primarily the new lot will have additional cost for snow management. Hardware and software, we want to make sure we're maintaining this over the life of the program, doing the proper cost of replacement over time. So we included that cost here. And then credit card fees for both parking lots. We currently estimate that it'd be about $90,000 in credit card fees. Over the time, we'll know more as we start seeing what the transactions look like, but this is our beginning estimate for those types of costs. We also want to make sure we're putting money aside to maintain these lots. We're looking to put $20,000 aside each year, and as we need repavement, remarking, we have the funding set aside to do the work and keep these parking lots up to a class it should be when you're providing paid parking. All in all, we're looking at about $288,000 in annual operating costs as we move forward with a paid parking program. So when I pulled my financial plan together, there were several things I needed to look at in discussion with several individuals. And we wanted to address our capital investment that we're putting in at the airport, the future capital investment needs that we want to continue forward, the operation expense, and also the impact on the general fund reliance. As we know this is an enterprise fund, we really want to free up that reliance to our general fund and make them self-supporting over time. So I'm going to start on the lower part of this because this is where you kind of start with the expense side and then you kind of build your revenues related to the need. So on the lower side, starting with uses of funds, we start with the capital investment recovery. So we realize that we should recover the cost of putting parking in, the expansion of about $4.9 million. And we spread this over a 15-year period. We feel that's a good, useful life of that initial investment, and we want to make sure we're covering it through fees over time. So that comes out to about $330,000 annually to recover that cost. Operational expense, we spoke on the previous slide. The first 5 months of this, last 5 months of this fiscal year, 5 months of the program, it's about $120,000 and then up to the full $288,000. We put some growth in here in a 2.5% to 3% growth for increased costs over time, increased personnel costs, and so forth. So that is where we want to cover our operational expenses on the second line. The third line is additional capital improvements. A lot of this is related to our existing parking lots. Barney mentioned some improvements we'd like to see at the parking lots we have, as well as the rental car and employee parking lots do need to be brought up to city code so we can utilize those properly also and take that off of the use of the paid parking areas. So we have about a $1.25 million projects that we're looking at investing on top of what we currently have done. The last line is where we kind of talk about the general fund reliance. The airport operation line reflects the under recovery of revenues within the airport fund over time. We understand that these next 3 years, all the way through 2024, we're very fortunate to receive CARES funding. The CARES fundings allowed us to not have to rely on the general fund and allow us to put a lot of investments, operating investments into the airport, which you'll probably be talking about in a future budget retreat or so forth. So we know we don't need that right away, but we, in our 5-year plans, recognize in fiscal year 24-25 is where they still need some general fund reliance to just support their airport operating. And that grows to $450,000 and continues in the out years. This is a solution we're trying to address through a paid parking program. We know the airport should be self-reliant as an enterprise fund, and users pay for the services and the facility that they get. So those are the expenditures and uses of funds that help me start discussion on what the rates should be. The upper portion is kind of a balance of how the revenues come in based on the rates we'll talk about on the next slide, I believe, and how those layer in and recover the costs over the time. So there was several things that came into discussion about fees and setting fees. Airport comparisons was important for us to see what other airports are doing, not necessarily to follow, but to see where we land in our ideas of a parking fee. Lots of discussion with the airport director, Barney, talking about what he feels is a capacity for the community. The expenditures, the uses of funds, as we spoke on the previous slide. And we also had a discussion with the airport commission, see what their take is and see what they felt was reasonable and to bring forward. As well as we have an airport team that meets every 2 weeks or so and talks about all things airport. This was one of the big discussions we've been having about setting rates and how we can move forward with this. And so that team was very involved in these discussions as I was building a financial model. So as we determined with the costs, we were able to develop the fees as presented on this slide. And you'll see it's for adoption on December 7th will be the first read of an ordinance. So starting at the top, You see kind of the types of rates we have along the first column of this report. The second column is the rate that we look to have effective on January 21st, 2022. That's 30 days after adoption of the ordinance that we're going to do in December. That's the earliest we can start collecting fees and rates at our airport. So that's the target date that we have. And then the third column is awareness that additional costs and general fund recovery is coming forward. We'll need to increase that fee slightly starting July of 2023. So going down, as we discussed fees, we felt it was reasonable for the first hour to be free for our visitors to our airports so they can park, run in, take care of business, take care of their family members or so forth who are flying in the airport. So the first hour we are proposing is free. After the first hour, we're looking at a $2 per hour rate for the lots. We feel this is a reasonable price for the second hour, third hour, and so forth. And then after they reach that $7 range, that'll basically be a full day fare that they would pay. At the terminal lot, which is the one closest to the airport terminal, is where we set a little bit higher rate because of the location and the premium location that may be and the accessibility. That rate we're looking to be a little bit higher than the economy lot. We are looking at that as about $7 per hour or per day. The terminal economy lot, which is the one we are building now, the large investment, we're looking at a $5 per day rate. So you can see people will get a discount for a little bit further walk, and maybe that's more reasonable for people who stay in longer trips and parking maybe a little bit farther. We also thought it was important to bring weekly rates forward, and the weekly rates are basically a one-day free. Buy 6, get 1 day free. So over the 7-day period, the terminal lot, the one closest to the airport, would be $42, and then the further lot would be $30. So that's how we went about developing fees and determining, through our conversations, building that in the financial model to determine, do these actually meet the revenue requirements that we're expecting to see? And it does work out at these numbers for us to make the airport self-sustaining, enterprise fund, and recapture costs that we've had. And with that, are you going to go run these? Back to my other sidekick.
Thank you again. What we put here is a sequence of events coming forward, and you're looking at the 60-day notice to public started on October 22nd, and we're looking at today's work session on November 23rd. There'll be a first read of the parking rates on 12/7, and on the second read will be 12/21. Starting on 12/22, we will start some additional marketing of the new rates. We'll be working with press releases. There'll be notifications at the airport. We'll send things out to various periodicals. We've already met with the Airport Commission for these recommendations multiple times. We've met with the Flagstaff Chamber of Commerce a week ago, and we'll be meeting with them again in, I believe, 2 weeks. This afternoon, met with the Tourism Commission, and then we'll do additional public outreach, such as what I said, where we'll have a press release and other forms of notification to the public, including here in City Hall. Then January 21st, the ordinance will go into effect. Any questions about what Rick and I presented?
Councilmember McCarthy?
Well, thank you, Barney. I appreciate your presentation. I did have a couple questions. The first one is about the charging station parking. Is the power that they get free? And once, they have to pay to park there, but do they have to pay for the electricity that they take, or is that free?
Right now, for the electric charging, it is going to be free. I did hear strongly from several council members we don't want to continue that, but it was more free up the front to encourage the usage of it. I think we're going to have to look at about a 12-month span and see how much cost that is before we come back to you with a recommended rate charge for that.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me, that, maybe a year or so for free, and then after that, it only makes sense that people pay for power. I mean, we have to pay when we buy gasoline, so why not electricity? The other question I had about the charging station parking is there a limit? Could a person park in that space and leave it their car a week or something, which would be very convenient for them, but it might be very inconvenient for other people that want to charge. So is there a time limit on how long you can park in that space?
There will be a time limit. Initially, I'm thinking in about 3 hours, but I do have to work with the APS and look at other manufacturers and see what a reasonable rate time would be for that. I don't want to give them 3 hours if that's not enough or if that's too much. But we were looking at 3 hours because our hope is that somebody has electric vehicles coming there and going to plug in, take their friends and family in to drop them off, and then come back out and not need the full 3 hours. They're just doing a replenish charge. That's our real hope for that station there.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're thinking about that. I'll leave the details to you guys. You mentioned that there's going to be some new bicycle paths out there, which I was very, what do you think, Adam? Is there going to be bicycle parking too? And will that be free, I hope, since,
Yes.
Since the bicycle takes very little room compared to a car.
We do have current bicycle lockups up. It's just a bar that you can lock your bicycle up to near the front entryway. There will be some lockers installed. I unfortunately didn't get a chance to talk to my engineering staff to find out the exact location for those, but there are going to be lockers for bicycles along with the stations that we do have right now at the front door where they can lock up.
You've got all the answers so far.
No, I don't. No.
No, good job. I did have real quickly, a history lesson that I'd like to get. I think you said that they built the current terminal in 1993, I believe it was.
Yes.
So I was just kind of curious. When did we start having flights in and out of that airport? Long before that?
Well, I don't want to sound kind of tooting a horn or something, but I wished you'd have been at our airport commission this last week because we started a history lesson about the airport. The airport, with getting too far off base, the land was purchased by the city from the federal government in 1948, July 1st, which is coming up on a 75th anniversary for those who haven't heard that yet.
That's the year I was born, incidentally.
And then the construction started that same year. I don't believe first service started until 1949. Shortly thereafter, we did have Frontier Airlines here. And then there's been a couple expansions of the runway. But so the public don't get too scared. We're as far out as we can with that runway length. It won't get any longer. We're limited by Lake Mary Road and I-17.
So there was no airstrip there or something before 48? No.
No, the airport before that was located out in Doney Park on what is Coach Field Road, and Coach Field was the airport at that time.
Interesting. All right. Thank you. You were right on top of all my questions. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for
Mayor.
those questions. We love the history stuff.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Shimoni.
Good afternoon, Barney and Heidi and Rick and everybody. Good to be here. Thank you for the presentation and the update. I do have a couple comments and questions, so I'm going to try to go through them as quickly as I can to be respectful of everybody's time. The sidewalk, you mentioned that there's going to be like a design implemented in the sidewalk. Is it going to be a design that over time is going to create complications for folks with wheelchairs and such to navigate?
We do not believe so. What is in the sidewalk is, they run from, I believe, 18 to 24-inch cast medallions that describe what is on the wall, and their historical backgrounds for our community. They are flush mounted. They don't raise up very high at all. And we actually had to go a little bit further than just wheelchairs. We were concerned about if we run a blade down through there that the blade doesn't pop them up. So they are about as flush mounted as we can get them.
Okay. In over 20, 30 years, you don't see that being an issue of erosion or something like that?
Well, that's hard to project. We know that concrete will heave and settle all over the town, but I do believe Eagle Mountain's been great for working for the city, and they're putting that in. I'm going to let you say that because I can't read your writing.
So Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Members, Heidi Hansen, Economic Vitality Director. We've already discussed this through BPAC. We've actually gone to the Commission Adaptive and Inclusion Commission and vetted it through them. If there were any long-term effects, it was already put into the maintenance of replacing them and making sure that there isn't any issues. Fully vetted.
Beautiful.
Thank you for the question.
Love to hear that. So moving on. Oh, did you want to add something?
Add one thing to that. The medallions and the artwork, which is going on the fence wall, is being done by an outside vendor, and it's running a little bit further behind, so you will not see that until the spring. We've reached a point in time where we can't install that with the weather we've got. So don't get too excited about the artwork until spring, but then please come out and see it.
Totally. Okay, 6 APS charging spots with the ability to add more, and the new lot, I believe is what you said. How many more is addable? What are we wired to be able to do?
Well, the initial conduit runs was to add an additional 6 spaces. But I think the way we're setting it up is it'll be on like an island line, so you might have 6 spaces on one side and 6 on the other. But if we need more in the future, we'll add more, because that's part of the reason for this revenue generator is to be able to meet the future needs of that. Okay. Our rental car people have already asked us to start installing those in the rental car lot.
Right, and I know the cost saving of doing it up front versus retroactive, so I just want to make sure we're doing enough up front given this new wave that's coming. And to Councilmember McCarthy's point about the charging, I fully agree and would support us charging ASAP, not even a year, whenever as soon as possible the time is. I think folks that can afford an electric vehicle can afford to pay. But go ahead, Heidi.
Mayor, Councilmember Shimoni, we also want to remind you that Swift Travel Center that went in a couple years ago offer charging stations. So we definitely don't want to compete with them and their business that they're doing with that already. They're very efficient. They do a charge in 20 minutes time. So we've been trying to, that's a delicate balance, right? And then also we wanted to actually see what the use is to know what we need to add. And so we'll be making sure that we're checking with our patrons and that we're doing surveys, things like that, so that we know what else we need to add in the future.
Great, thank you. I love as we continue down this path, now that it seems like we're almost going downhill on this plan, on this project, that we start picking up the conversation regarding Mountain Line and bus services. What I'm learning from talking to Mountain Line leadership is that a extended route from the hospital's projected location isn't necessarily the best plan, but more of like a pilot corridor effort where it very much works with the person that shows up when they show up, fills up a van, and then travels to somewhere in town, almost like a custom approach, because I think that's what it will take to get people to actually utilize that versus bringing their car. So I'd love for us to start heading down that path. I know that's another conversation, but my question is, what do you all see being those first steps needed to be taken to start moving down that path? If you had any insight right now that you could share.
Well, the system you're talking about with Mountain Line, they could actually start that today because they're using it with their express bus route. I just don't think that the volume of passengers is there to justify the cost yet. It will come. I'm not sure that any of us could give that date. I do think over the next 2 years, since Northern Arizona Healthcare has brought this forward to us, that we're going to have to do a study that will use a reliable source, not just somebody like myself, to look at what that actual demand is necessary to cover the cost for that.
I hear you, and I just struggle when we're building an additional 413 spaces. But City Manager, did you want to jump in?
We need to stay with parking tonight. This
That's
is
fine.
another discussion for another day. Thanks.
Okay, we'll talk more about this later.
Yes.
Credit card fees, obviously I struggle with that, and I think we all probably do, so I don't know if there's anything that can be done on that, but want to empower the team to continue to look. I know that's probably limited. And my other question is, in moving this in front of the commissions, is it possible to bring it before the Transportation and the Sustainability Commission?
Yes. I will reach out to both those commissions and see if we can get something set up as soon as possible.
And then lastly, I noticed in the chart that the parking revenues basically stay flat over the next few years. I mean, they do increase, but it's subtle. At what occupancy of our lots do you see that rate being?
Well, when Rick and I first started working on this, we used a number of cars as to be 400 a day, 200 for each lot. I think we're already going to exceed that when we get into the first year, but we want to be conservative with our numbers. So that's where that started from. And until we get actual numbers after about a year, I'm not sure we can say how quickly it's going to grow. The real driver is going to be air service.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Councilmember. Other questions? Councilmember Aslan.
I'll bite. Hi, Barney. Real quick, what's the enforcement mechanism for the charging stations to keep cars at 3 hours or less, or whatever the number is?
Well, we'll have signage put up, and then Park Flag will assist us with on that. In the ordinance, Rick, can you help me with that? I believe that the EV parking is listed in there also.
It's got to be more expensive to leave your car there than it is to charge it for free. I know that much.
Yeah. The ordinance that's coming forward on December 7th will include a blurb about it's going to be enforced just like any other city parking enforcement and follow the rules and regulations of our parking facility.
So there will be a
but
Park
we will
Flag
have our Park Flag
golf
team
cart
help
going
out.
around and checking things out. And
Yeah, we hope the team helps.
That's sufficient in my mind. The other question, if you go back to the fees, each hour is $2 after the first hour, $7 total for a day. I'm just wondering how many vehicles parking in our airport parking lot are going to be there for a time frame that does not exceed $7. I'm just curious if you guys have crunched the numbers, and I'm not really sure how to formulate this question, but it seems unlikely to me that we're going to have cars at that parking lot for only 4.5 hours, and so $2 per hour is kind of moot.
I think it's going to depend on the days that we have delays. Delays oftentimes bring family members out to spend a few hours with them or drop them off. Other than that, I agree. I don't think we'll see a lot of people that just come in and stay for, yeah, that's not common. It is common for come in and stay for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but.
Mayor, Councilmember Aslan. Also, we have an air cafe that runs out there, and we would like to have them to be successful to offer service that's not just for airport traffic. Some cafes do very well, and we would like them to be helpful to the community. So someone wanted to come out there, and they actually didn't mind paying for parking and wanted to have something to eat. We'd love for them to be able to stay, and some are going to want to stay maybe past the hour or whatever. We also have Air Cafe that will have some people actually come out and do meetings. We actually have other groups that like to use our conference room. We are not going to say you don't have to pay for parking. If they're going to come and do business, we need them to pay for parking. So there's reasons to have that element in there just in case.
That makes sense to me, and I understand the need for that flexibility. And what's behind all these questions is just I'm wondering if there's a way to play around with that hourly rate to the benefit of Park Flag and the airport. But it's just, I'm just dancing around a deeper mathematical concept here, I think.
I thank you for that question, Councilmember Aslan. There is an FAA requirement that revenues generated at the airport stay in the revenue or that airport fund. What we can do, though, is the employees coming out there, that is a cost to us that we would have to incur otherwise so we could pay it. To pay for others' parking throughout the city, we would probably be skirting FAA requirements to divert that money.
Yeah, that's not what I meant by my question,
Okay.
so I apologize. Just what's the maximal rate per hour that matches what someone who's not staying there all day would probably, where's that sweet spot where we're generating the most revenue for the person's likely length of non-all-day stay? I don't know if that makes sense.
It does
I could
make sense.
formulate that better if I had more time. But
When you consider what the rate is to go downtown, it's just $1 an hour. We didn't want to get too crazy at the airport because we're hoping that some of those visitors are the same people that actually want to go downtown and all that. And in some cases, we even wrangled with the idea of keeping it $1 in both areas. But then when we vetted it, which I need to share with you, when we vetted it to the Airport Commission several times, and Councilmember Salas is our liaison, so she knows we have, and the Flagstaff Chambers Advisory and our Tourism Commission, no one blinked an eye. They're ready for it. They're tired of driving into the parking lot and hoping they have a spot or parking near the trees and things like that. So they felt like we really had done a great job speaking to several people, mulling this over with our internal groups, and they feel like we've got to the right space. So I can appreciate what you're saying. I can appreciate you wanting us to be able to, get this debt served and all of that. But I think that with Rick's work on this with us, we're going to be in really good shape. Not to mention, we have some other things that will be coming before you later that will show you some other ways that we'll be creating revenue for the airport to sustain us even further.
that's wonderful. And for me, the goal at the end of the day is not revenue creation, but it's flexibility for the consumer. So I like what you had to say about, someone feeling if parking is cheap enough, they can pay to park and then leave, go into town, do some shopping, do some looking around, and come back, and without making that calculation in their mind, well, I just spent so much on parking, I better use it. That sort of scenario. Thanks, I'm done.
I wanted to add one more thing there that'll help you with some of your thoughts, is that the system that we're putting in will be a pay-by-license plate. It'll be reading the plate coming in. So at the end of the year, we'll be able to take the data that comes from that and help us put together what we're seeing from a pattern as far as daily parkers, weekly, hourly parkers, and see an additional thought is that if we still don't have a high enough price for that front lot and everybody's using it, we may need to come back to you to adjust that so that we keep a balance.
One more question that you generated from what you just said. So could a parker come and go from the parking lot because the permit is based on their license plate? Or
the billing's based on the license plate so that we know that vehicles come in and out. They're still going to have
But there are not come and go privileges with each transaction.
Well, if they come in for an hour and want to leave, then they could still do that free. If they come back an hour, I'm concerned what they're doing out there, but they do have that flexibility.
They're going to the Swift. I don't know. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember McCarthy.
I think I forgot to mention that the idea of a 1 hour free, I really like that. Because if somebody's going out there just to pick up somebody and, they're only there for 45 minutes, I think that's great that they can get it free. I also like the idea that we're trying to work towards treating the airport as an enterprise fund. So it wouldn't bother me too much if those rates after the first hour, the first free hour, if they creeped up slightly, especially in the close-in lot. So, we'll keep them at this for now, but just to give you a gut feel for where my head's at. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Well, thank you all for your work on this. I will note that Dave McIntyre said in the box here that December 14th is when the artwork will be presented before us here on council, so we'll be able to take a first-hand look, and then we will see you back here December 7th as well. So, thank you. Councilmember McCarthy.
I didn't realize that I was an art critic.
Oh, Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one final comment. I really appreciate our team with Airport and Economic Vitality for keeping our daily services to Phoenix, Denver, and Dallas Fort Worth. I love the Flagstaff Denver flight. It allows me the opportunity to visit my son more often. And I think this proposed parking rate also benefits residents of Flagstaff who fly out of Flagstaff. So hashtag fly Flagstaff first. And also for business trips, for corporates and flying out of Flagstaff to other destination. I do want to, just keeping my thinking hat on, is if there's outreach with the business community in having more long-term parking rates, monthly, if that's one of the options that can be explored in the future. Thank you. And with that, I give you grateful hearts.
Thank you. Mayor, Councilmember Salas, I'm glad you brought this up. We are actually putting together an airport website that's standalone from the City of Flagstaff website. It will actually have a link from the City of Flagstaff website to our website. It'll be flyflagstaffaz.com. Went through a lot of renditions of trying to get to a URL, and that's the one we're using. And so you'll also have an ability to know about parking and all the different changes of the airport on our website that we will definitely be, utilizing SEO and all of that for. So just want to let you know, vast marketing plan for all of this as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. With that, we are down to agenda item number 6. This is the Museum Flood Mitigation Plan. I see we got the full team here.
Cracks me up every time because that is not what I see on my screen. But yes, that is Hui. Hopefully she's home being a good girl and not being naughty. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Shannon Anderson, one of your deputy city managers. Today we're before you to discuss the museum flood mitigation plan. As we might look back, this evening's presentation was prompted by a citizen petition that Council considered during your October 5th Council meeting. This petition was specifically seeking answers to the 37 questions that were attached to the petition, a meeting with both city and county representatives, a comprehensive report of completed mitigation on museum burn scar and watershed, what the outcomes have been, and then lastly, what are the short, mid, and long-term plans for flooding. Given these requests, I thought it would be beneficial to reference the joint city and county meeting that we had on August 23rd, given that we spoke about some of these items. I've attached this presentation to this staff summary, and individuals can also view the streamed or recorded version of it on the city's website. Today we have a terrific team of professionals presenting the mitigation plan updates, funding, and communication. We'll hear from Andy Bertelson, our interim water services director, Sam Beckett. He is our new public works section director overseeing streets. Sam joins us recently from the county where he's been part of public works, emergency management, and was a part of the museum emergency response team this last summer. Ed Schenk from Stormwater, he's the stormwater manager. Scott Overton, our interim public works director. And then Gary Miller, our water services engineering section director. New position for Gary as well. Congratulations on his promotion. So I will turn it over first to Andy, and he'll get us started on the mitigation plan updates.
Thank you, Shannon. I'm Andy Bertelson, Interim Water Services Director. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us this evening. Anytime we have a disaster response type situation, a big part of responding appropriately is getting the right people in the right places. So we wanted to recognize Shannon for being the calm, cool professional that she was all summer and continues to be. And it just builds on the strength of the team. So with that, during the summer, I served as co-incident commander with Lucinda Andriani, a member of the Coconino County Flood Control District and the deputy county manager. Disasters always bring people together for better or for worse, but it's usually a very bad situation, and we're trying to help improve that situation the best we can. We are battling in those situations an undefeated opponent in Mother Nature. That said, we respond to what Mother Nature provides and try to make the best of the situation. So during the summer, it was response, response, response. And we spent a lot of funds and we utilized a lot of resources. And we have some of the best responders here with us, Scott Overton, and then Sam Beckett was with the county at the time. Through those relationships that we formed, we were very fortunate to bring Sam into our city team. I personally have worked with Sam for a number of years and think highly of him, and we at the city are very lucky to have him on board with us. But it's still a team effort between us and Coconino County Flood Control District. So, after the response efforts take place in the summer, we get together and that we say, how can we change this dynamic? Because the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again. We did a lot of that this summer. We're partially insane, but we're still here to tell you about it. The Flood Control District was able to coordinate with cooperation from us and our efforts. The Chief Moore visiting, the Forest Service Chief, very significant visit. Very fortunate to have him come here. The Coconino National Forest is a national treasure. He came to visit the Coconino National Forest. With him, the congressional delegations. We were able to show that group the impacts of the museum, post-wildfire flooding, the burn scar. The goal was to get the chief to say, yes, group, you can use federal funds wherever they come from. We weren't quite clear on that yet, on national forest land. After the tour, after the visit, after some really significant and impactful conversations, Chief Moore stood up after the tour and said, not only will we allow this to happen, you have proven to us that this is necessary, I'll pledge to provide the funding. Immediately, I'll let Greg and Shannon know, after probably tearing up a little bit, because that was a very impactful decision, and it's somewhat precedent-setting in how we manage our national forest. And us being a forest with our Forest Health Initiative, a forest community, it's very significant for us here in Flagstaff. So that federal funding for watershed restoration, point being, we need to significantly reduce the amount of sediment that's being delivered to us. There are a lot of things that we're working on trying to complete within the city limits, and these folks will tell you about that. As the flows enter Paradise, down through our neighborhoods, Paradise, Grandview, Sunnyside, Killip School, Route 66. There are a lot of things that we can do in that corridor, but that work could be for naught if we can't look at the sediment reduction measures. And that's what we're hoping to be able to do. I know the flood control district, they're going to be managing those projects. Their goal is to get these implemented prior to the monsoon season next year. That's a pretty lofty goal, but given the effort and time put into this by all of us, I think that there's a lot of work that we're going to be able to do and that they're going to be able to do. I say we because it's a collective team, and anytime there's a successful effort, you want to attach yourself to it. So we're hopeful that will provide mitigation for 400 homes, 35 businesses. Essentially, on the last flood of August 17th, the entire community from West Street to 4th Street down to Route 66, Cedar, and above Linda Vista was completely shut down. School was flooded. Bob Kuhn, the assistant superintendent, was talking to us. We were with the police chief and others at that point. Scott Overton was able to talk to Bob and say, you can't evacuate, there's nowhere to go. Shelter in place. There's water in the school. Find the high ground in the school. It was a true emergency situation. That school no longer is being utilized. The goal is to have the new school open by next school year. And that site, we continue to work on the future site of a water retention / detention basin. So continuing to work on that effort. So big news, and this was exactly 2 weeks ago today that Chief Moore pledged that $3.5 million for those efforts. Are there any questions on that? So mitigation update, Natural Resources Conservation Service. We've relied on some of the local experience with the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. I'm going to turn to Sam Beckett to talk about the project a little bit. But this has also been a pledge to us to be able to utilize this funding source for projects in the upper watershed. So with that, I'll turn it to Sam.
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. Sorry, if I say board members, I apologize. I spent 16 years on a different side of this, so I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to be up here to present in front of you all as Team Flagstaff, a member of Team Flagstaff, so I'm very excited about that. Again, Sam Beckett, my role in a lot of this over the last few years has been a lot of the planning side of it. This year here, I served as the plan section chief for the incident management team, so I've got a little bit of history, a little bit of experience and understanding of what we've been trying to deal with here. As far as the NRCS funds, it's a grant-based system, right? The style of it is trying to get funding for projects that no one else is really going to fund. And it's been really, really key in history with us, dealing with some of our previous floods to get these fundings in place. Super important to have. Now it is a match-based system. You'll see that on the bottom there. It's a 25% match. This was something that was part of that discussion when the Forest Service came in to make sure that we had that in place. Two of the big items are, I apologize, yeah. I might overshadow.
You got to get an
mic.
extension cord.
Yeah, if we can just get this up a little bit higher, it's not a big deal. I can, we'll work on that, there is a 40-acre parcel above Mount Eldon Estates. I think most of you have been on all the tours. You've been into Mount Eldon Estates. Just up from there, there's a 40-acre parcel that's been identified to get some work done in there to help reduce sediment flow. Sediment is a huge piece of what we're trying to reduce. The water is important. The sediment is even more important. We want to keep the mountain up on the mountain. The 3.6 acres that you see listed in there is a parcel just above Linda Vista. And now we'll see that here in just a second. Natural Channel Design has been working on a concept to put in 4 sediment basins to help reduce even more of that sediment as it comes down. Now that comes with a cost. There is a maintenance process that goes with that. But ultimately, this is going to fund the projects. And that's the biggest piece of this, right? That's a huge, huge chunk of money here to get that in. Again, it goes back to the partnerships that Andy and Shannon both talked about, that partnership with the county and the city. The county from the flood control district is going to match that 25%, and so that's a huge, huge piece of that, and we're very appreciative of that. This here is that concept design that we were discussing. So if you look at it, you can see that there's going to be 4 basins when it's all said and done, and those basins are designed to help trap and reduce that sediment flow into the stormwater system, so Ed doesn't have to stress nearly as much about that, hopefully, if everything goes into place. That comes in right off of Paradise. If you know where Park Way is right there, that little cul-de-sac as you head up Paradise on the right-hand side, you can see that they've got it designed where there is easy access to be able to get in there, because it is a maintenance-based system, right? This is designed to drop out sediment, which means over time they're going to have to be cleaned out so that system stays up and running. But again, this all goes back to the success of getting that funding. Huge, huge importance to get that funding. All right, I'm going to hand this over to Ed Schenk. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ed Schenk, Stormwater Manager. This summer, I also served on the Incident Management Team, the IMT, for both operations and engineering. And back in 2019, several of us also served on EOC or IMT during the flood, or during the fire, I should say. So we've all been working on this for several years now. The engineering group is actually still meeting weekly to work on these different issues. So this is still taking quite a bit of our daily and weekly duties to address these issues. What we're seeing here on this slide is work that's been done this fall. This was a city-county project to stabilize, restore, enhance the channel at the top of Paradise. If you're up there before this project, you'll see that was a bottleneck. It was a really tight area for the channel at the top of the Paradise cul-de-sac with a Forest Service hill slope on the north side of it. So the county and the city went in roughly 50-50 to enhance this. Luckily, we already had NEPA in place with the Forest Service going back to 2019, and we worked with the Forest Service to have the approval go through pretty quickly here. So this enhancement essentially took the bottleneck, which was a rather dangerous area. We had 2 overtoppings of those barriers that you see there during the flood events, and it allowed us to expand that to take in quite a bit more capacity, as well as to stabilize those channels again. So those rocks that you see at the bottom there are actually engineered to keep the channel in place, to stabilize it, which is important both for sediment reduction and sediment transport, and then also for the utilities that are in that area. Water Services does have a main line that comes down from the Paradise tank that feeds the Paradise and Grandview area that we need to protect. And then just upstream of this picture is actually the Kinder Morgan pipeline as well. So a lot of utilities that we need to maintain here, and a lot of work that goes into it. If you haven't been up there, I highly recommend taking a look at some point when there's not much traffic. Projects we're working on right now, there's several, but the one that's front and center in our world right now is the Dortha Inlet and Channel. So this is a channel enhancement from Cedar down to Dortha to allow a little more flow through there, and then the Dortha Inlets to allow flow to go under the Dortha Avenue. At the moment, we have a 60-inch corrugated metal pipe at Dortha, and the channel above that, even though it's been cleaned out several times over the summer, is still fairly small for the amount of flow that we're going to be seeing. We're considering future maintenance, obviously, when we're doing this design. Since we have had to muck that out several times this summer, we want to make sure that we're not spending a whole lot of money with that sediment removal. A lot of this we're still working with our feasibility analysis. This is an analysis that we're working with a couple of our local consulting teams in Flagstaff to make sure that we have this sized correctly for the larger system. And the estimated construction cost due to the utility relocates and utility protections and property is up to $2 million. So it is a little bit of a project here.
I have a question on the Dortha Inlet.
Sure.
So I know our construction costs have been going up dramatically this last year. When we were looking at this before, it was about $900,000 to $1 million. Are we doing additional work, or is this the same amount of work we were originally expecting, $900,000, that is now going to $2 million?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of the cost going up, and then there's also a little extra work going into it compared to the original design.
Okay.
So just seeing and having validation of the flows that we're seeing does require us to change design slightly so that we have a more robust design for the amount of water we're expecting to see.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Ed. Back to the Dortha Inlet. Am I correct that we already have the money budgeted and that we expect to have that project done soon?
We do have that budgeted through stormwater capital improvements. And with that design, it's still being vetted by the city, but it's very close. And we have that with our capital improvement team. So Christine Cameron is the project manager for it. So our hope, our desire is to have this all done before monsoons so that we can tie it eventually into the Killip School detention basin. And with that, I'll move on to Scott.
Scott Overton, Interim Public Works Director, and also I served, obviously, since the museum fire, but this past summer as your Incident Management Team Section Operations Chief for the Bravo Division, which is the most urban, dense portion of the division. I covered territory from top of Paradise all the way to Butler and 4th Street. So clearly the largest, probably urban section of the floodway. And you've heard about the pieces and the parts, and there's two really important pieces that I'll speak to that I've been working on, the Killip Detention Basin and then the feasibility piece. One thing that I wish we'd kind of conveyed early is Andy really underscored the need to keep sediment on the mountain. And we've all recognized, every engineer in the room has recognized, the more work we can do in the entire region is great, but the most impactful will be to keep sediment up on the mountain. This past summer, we hauled just over 11,000 tons of debris out of the area. And I think that resonated. I think that resonated with our delegation, with our Forest Service representatives, and I think it was a very strong story we told. And I think it was a success of the county and the city working together to demonstrate a lot of these project efforts are not going to be as effective as we hope if we can't keep a lot of the sediment and debris on the actual mountain. So our goal, first place, is let's try to do as much as possible on forest. But as you've heard moving downstream, we know there's a reality of continued sediment. Not everything will stay on the mountain. Some of it's just going to be the best guess we can get at the top. And then we, of course, still have the water flows. So as Ed has kind of worked downstream, Sam covered some of those detention basin efforts on Paradise. Ed has now provided a little more insight between Cedar and the Arroyo Seco area. And then there's a couple bottlenecks that we continue to evaluate as well. We didn't cover them tonight, but we continue to look at those. But another very large one that is very timely is the Killip Detention Basin. This one coincides with the new elementary school that is being built on the existing school site. The former Killip School is now demolished. The newer school is to the east and built out of the floodway. We are in pretty good negotiations in what I would consider kind of the last design effort of a very good area to place a lot of water. We're looking between 8 and 11 acre feet of water to be stored on the Killip School site. We're working with Core Construction, that is the contractor that is building the school and completing their on-site improvements, and SWI, Shepherd Witznitzer Engineering. Those two are assisting the school district and the city in this collaborative effort to try to not only design the best system possible for this area and detain as much as possible, but if you think about it, this really provides a lot of relief to all of our residents living south of 6th Avenue. And we know that even though it's a small area and it's only 6th Avenue South that might receive the greatest impact, it is the greatest impact to a lot of residents. And we hope that this will do a lot of good work at not only storing that water, but slowly releasing it versus a sheer flood of water, as well as some debris detention at that site in silt, debris, or sediment that isn't caught upstream. In addition to the actual ponds that will be utilized as play surfaces, fields, soccer fields, softball fields in the future years as they can be developed, there's an underground stormwater infrastructure piece that's very important that moves the water from the detention basins down 6th Avenue and connects to 3rd Street. That's another really important piece that we're nailing down the final details with. This will come back to you in the next few months. We have an IGA that will clearly articulate not only the construction design, but also our cost shares from the school district and the city. And then we anticipate a maintenance agreement with what that will look like for years to come in terms of the needed maintenance during storm events and then just annual maintenance. This next one I really need you to spend just a second to concentrate on. It's the most boring piece, but also the most exciting for our engineering group. We have commissioned a feasibility flooding analysis, and this is a part of a two-piece effort. The first piece was a new modeling effort, and the county took that piece on late summer. It is currently and has been underway for about a month and a half now. J.E. Fuller and Joe Leverich are now developing new modeling that will show from Forest through the actual Spruce Avenue wash what our model looks like based on some of the real-time feedback we got from these past storms. That piece is really important for these engineers to understand how much water, where does it go, what does it look like. This next piece the city is taking, and this is the feasibility analysis. So we have now contracted with Peak Engineering. Julie Lead, who you have met, she sits on your Transportation Commission, and she weighs in a lot of times on transportation issues. Very, very familiar with this project. Her firm is now taking all of the data, all of the modeling, and they're performing the actual technical analysis. And I know it's time consuming, and I know we wish it were done yesterday, but we've got to give them some room, and we've been giving them as much information as possible. And this is the meeting that Ed was speaking to. Weekly we meet as an engineering team, and it's pretty cool to see all these different engineering firms and all these government officials really speaking to each other and working through all their issues, because without good modeling and without good feasibility, we don't know if it's a good project, if it's money well spent, if it's a project that doesn't create different effects. So Julie's analysis is critical at this point to really get us good feedback that says it is a meaningful improvement, it doesn't create adverse impacts downstream, and it makes sense to deliver as quickly as possible. Ed had mentioned their focus is to move to the projects that we're pushing quickly, the Killip site, the Dorotha site, the Linda Vista Crossing, the ponds, they're adjacent to Paradise. It's awkward for them because they don't want to start in the middle and work both ends of this watershed, but unfortunately, that's where we're at. So they've been doing that work. We expect that to be done in the next couple months. They will rank a lot of our longer-term projects so that you can have good information about how you prioritize budget dollars. They're also going to prepare some analysis and alternatives. So if something doesn't work, we've asked what would work. What are some different ways we can approach this issue from a different design perspective? And we, of course, want to rank these projects so that as you have limited dollars and resources, we can assign those to the highest ranking projects. It's a little bit awkward. We would have loved to have all this done before these projects were on the table, but they've done a good job of trying to incorporate the efforts we're currently underway with into their feasibility analysis. Messed it up. All right, next one. Funding of this mitigation comes back to Andy, and good luck.
Good luck. See this relationship that we have? Says good luck and walks away. So the feasibility analysis, and the goal has been not analysis and get paralysis in doing so, right? It's analysis with intent. And Vice Mayor, you had asked about the Dorotha project, and you've all identified projects that need to happen, and we've identified them here, and they're no different. This is the same list that you witnessed at our council retreat on September 30th. In doing so, we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing in the right places. And by that I mean we upsized the Linda Vista culvert last year, doubled the size from rough numbers, 150 cubic feet per second to 300. It needs to be doubled yet again. When we doubled the size of that culvert, we utilized city dollars in which to do so. We couldn't accept the federal dollars in which to do it because their timeline was not conducive to the timeline that we were on. In other words, we're working in minutes, and we couldn't wait on their weeks or days or hours. So we're just really accelerating these timelines. We recognize, especially folks like Scott and I, that it does present a certain level of discomfort with engineers, and that we're really pushing them to say, we understand we need to study this. We understand we need to make that we're doing the right thing in the right places, but our timeline is right now. And in fact, it was yesterday for many of the residents, rightfully so. It's a terrible situation. So with that sediment reduction, and Scott highlighted that is a big move, and we're really excited to be able to be a part of that project in any way we can, and how it ties into what we're trying to do for our local community, our local residents in the city-built environment. So the Spruce Channel Master Plan development, as Scott had mentioned, Paradise Channel improvements, Ed talked about that a bit. Parkway area detention, retention, that's essentially the basins that Sam had talked about. Linda Vista Culvert improvement, I had mentioned we doubled the size. We need to double the size yet again for the entirety of that channel. Down to the Cedar Culvert, it's a box culvert under the roadway of Cedar Avenue. As you all know, you saw the box culvert being replaced out here on Route 66. Those are a bit bigger projects, but it's something that needs to happen. And then the channels in between, from Linda Vista to Cedar Culvert, Dortha Channel, and then eventually working to get those flows in a safe place like the current Killip School location. So the Dortha Inlet, then Arroyo Seco. So you'll see there's a diversion there. Arroyo Seco still takes on a lot of water, I'll use that term. And then Ponderosa Park has been an outlet for that. Ponderosa Park is where we have the new pickleball courts. It's a beautiful community amenity. Some of that amenity will need to, it's already flowing through there, and so we'll need to somehow solidify that for the future to ensure that it gets to that Killip School detention basin. And then various channel improvements, and we call them hot spots or spot improvements as are necessary. So in total, the estimated cost is between $12 to $18 million. They're not small numbers, but those are the numbers that we're working off of going forward. Like I'd said, the group that we have assembled, and I know folks get frustrated, well, how long are you going to study it when you're going to do something? And we're really pushing those timelines as hard as we can to make sure that we implement the projects that need to be implemented. And you live and learn. So we did the right thing, and it's all with good intention. We doubled the size of the Linda Vista culvert. It needs to be doubled yet again. We didn't anticipate that we would get 3 hours of rain in an hour, producing 1,200 to 1,800 cubic feet per second through our community. Those are significant rain events. And when you look at the climate models and you look at the significant impact when it rains, it pours, that truthed out for us this summer. Didn't rain. We had the monsoons the last 2 summers. Who knows what the future holds, but we'll be prepared for it the best that we can. This infrastructure, we won't be able to build to that 1,200 to 1,800 cubic feet per second through our urban infrastructure. We're looking at about 600 cubic feet per second right now. That would allow us to manage a quote-unquote normal rain event, or even an inch of rain in an hour, which is a significant rain event. But those major rain events that we witnessed and experienced and lived through this summer were hugely impactful. And to build to that infrastructure, our cost would increase exponentially. We talked about bypasses. That's another, $20 million on top of these $12 to $18 million that we're already talking about. So thank you for your time. I believe Shannon has communication with residents slides, and I'll turn to Shannon, and then we'll have Q&A afterwards.
All right. Well, typically you'd be hearing from Sarah Langley at this point, but she is on vacation this week. Good for her, taking some much-needed time. So I'm going to go through the communication with residents slide. As part of this petition, as we mentioned, we received 37 questions. We've also received questions through City Council, through some of the boards of supervisors, directly from residents. And so we've accumulated all of those in 2 FAQ documents. One that is about flood mitigation, emergency response, emergency declarations. That's going to be on our Flood Control District website. Things that are specific to city services, you're going to find that on our city services website. So those are the two locations where people will be able to find the answers to their questions that they've submitted. We've provided links here within the presentation. In addition, what we've been hearing in some of our neighborhood meetings is the desire to be able to log a question or a concern on the computer or on a web-based program instead of having to make a phone call. And so we wanted to remind folks that we do have a request tracker. We think that this would be a good solution to supplement the call center that the county currently has in place. And it also is a web-based solution. So individuals can type their question or their comment into the request tracker on the city's website, and that goes to the appropriate individuals to be able to respond to that question or concern. There was also a desire to want to have more communication with council. And so as a result, staff would recommend that we look at work sessions. I realize work sessions sometimes can feel confining, right? We have them every other Tuesday, but I want to remind us that we can have work sessions on other dates if that works, at different times if that works. But the benefit of using a work session is that you can engage in two-way communication because it's an agendized meeting. And so that's why this is a recommendation from staff, that we create work sessions where you can have communication with impacted residents, provide updates, hear their questions, and provide responses. And then the last piece is a work in progress. We are currently looking at a public relations consultant to provide services related to museum flood as well as the mitigation efforts. They would be helping us with written materials, with public notices, to where we can really be focusing on the responses and the mitigation and be using experts to help us with that messaging. So we will be ferrying that out a little bit further, and once we have some more recommendations, can bring that forward in a future update as well. So those are the ideas that we have and recommendations on communication, but I know this is an important topic to council, so certainly we're here to answer questions, hear your feedback on all of the information that's been presented to you tonight.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, before we get into discussion and questions, I'd like to take the public participation at this point. We'll start with those in the room and then understand we have a few electronically as well. So, Don Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and all the employees that showed up today. Yat-eh in Navajo, this is more than just a greeting. It is a prayer. It is praying that you have goodness in your life. When you respond to me, oh, Yat-eh, you are receiving my prayer and offering yours in return. When I came to City Hall on October 5th, not one employee said good morning. All employees should be assigned 20 hours of customer service videos every month. Number 2, all employees should be trained on more than one job like they do at fast food restaurants for emergencies. Number 3, each department should have one representative that speaks officially for that department to streamline communication. Number 4, residents should be assigned a case number when they have questions to ensure they are being heard. Number 5, a survey should be offered to residents after each interaction with employees to improve conditions. Our house is abandoned, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder because we are victims of a baseless lawsuit called scorching, which started because government employees are pitting residents against each other with outright lies. Most government officials mean well, good intentions, right? But too many are prideful and others are cowardly. Our family is not worried about disasters because we are resilient and capable. We are beaten and kicked down by social norms which lead to questionable actions, as I heard here, by those in charge. There are 4 criteria in disaster mitigation: technical, financial, legal, and environmental cultural. You don't hear about environmental culture, and it's been changed to social, by the way, which is very concerning. In Navajo culture, norms are based on creation, which implies an all-powerful creator. Western laws are based on culture of the Bible, which also implies an all-powerful creator. The original purpose of law has been abandoned by imperfect lawyers and who become imperfect judges. In all cultures, children are innocent because their conscience is not yet trained by ancient teachings, such as the following. The fruitage of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faith, mildness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. That's doing the right thing. When these cultural teachings are replaced by social norms, then our problems are bigger than any flood or natural disaster. These fires and floods are highlighting Flagstaff's social norms today. Today, authorities abuse me. Today, white people legally steal my land. Today, I am subjected to disease by maskless residents, unsanitary conditions when government officials lie and say they are cleaning my streets and they're not, and stale water which builds up because engineers aren't following their own standards for safe drainage. Residents throughout Flagstaff are getting a taste of racism through classism. Social norms in society today are to do nothing, blame everyone, and declare bankruptcy. So if they countersue, the victors cannot get back lawyers' fees. We're leaving Flagstaff after 6 generations with nothing but our stories and prayers.
Thank you, Don. Why are you leaving Flagstaff? I want you to be able to continue.
I didn't get to thank everybody, but the reason we're leaving Flagstaff is because I'm sitting here and I'm listening to things that aren't true, and county and city workers are cussing at us and they're laughing at us when we're moving sandbags, and there's no liaison. You know, that thing doesn't work, that request tracker, because I've reported people and nobody's gotten back to me. And when I called to follow up about what about this person that did this, there's nobody that it was only recorded once. And so we just, these climate initiatives, sustainability programs, and these resiliency programs that the city is putting on isn't going to work if attitudes aren't changed. And there's a lot of things going on that you guys, I don't think you're aware of. It's been happening for these box bridges they're talking about. Every road has them on the west side. We're asking for one on Dortha, and then they want us to beg and plead and say thank you, which we are thankful. But this is, like it was already mentioned, this is years, 60 years that we've been waiting for this. So
I'm sorry you're in this position, Don.
And I just wanted to bring that to the council today, that, you know, we need people that are going to communicate with us. And it's not a joke. I'm not just up here as a mad, angry person. I'm up here because you guys need to know there are real things that could be done, which I don't have time to go over it. Or, I mean, if I could sit with these engineers, and I don't know why they're not bringing them up. The drainage, they put sandbags in the alley. When they built the roads, see, I can't fight. We can fight. We're going to come up with a system before it was put on the county website. Me and my husband, we've already designed a system. You're going to put an aluminum thing in the door. It's going to stop the water. Our house isn't going to flood, which another thing, the assessments that they gave my house were way under. Way under. Who do I talk to about that? So we can fix our own house. We had problems with the permits. These are real issues. It's just not some angry lady up here talking to you. I had permit problems to fix my house. And they said they were denied, and then they said you could do it. And so we can fix our problems. We're not here begging for help, but if you're not going to give it to us, you might as well be supporting us. When we lose our house, you might as well be supporting us. And all these, you guys are always talking about getting people homes, and our home supports 10 people. And now we're going to have to give up our home because somebody at the permit office lost the paper or forgot to send the email. And when we call, they're rude to us. Like, this is real stuff. Just be nice and do your job. And I'm just saying you because those people aren't here. And so who do I talk to? Where's the liaison person I can talk to and say, hey, can you go with me to talk to the permit office and explain to me? I'm so nervous being here. You've never seen me here because we take care of ourselves, but we're at the point where we've lost everything, so who cares? Why aren't more people here? Because they're sick of it. They're sick of it. They don't want to come. I'm here for them because it's too late for us. I'm here for them.
I'm sorry, Don. Vice Mayor had a question, I believe, for you.
Can you elaborate on the phone calls that you've made to the call center and how or whether those were tracked?
Okay, so thank you for that question, Vice Mayor Daggett. So when this started, August 17th was the big flood in the afternoon. We found out the next day that the reporters wanted to come to Sunnyside. They were told it was too dangerous. I called that evening because we don't have flood insurance. We don't need flood insurance. We know what to do. We had 10 people clear out the house. We saved our house in 3 days, paid $800 for a mold test. If we had waited for the flood insurance people to come, we could have lost more because we flooded 4 to 6 inches. We had to throw all our belongings pretty much away. So we called the call center Friday night. And I said, we need help, which I saw a YouTube video. They said they had the street cleaner going 24 hours, not in Sunnyside, not on Main Street. We had people volunteering to take our stuff and throw it away to the street. We had people shovels, getting the mud, putting it in the wheelbarrows. We were cleaning the whole house. I said, we can't breathe. I have asthma. My kids have asthma. We have 10 people that are supported by that house. They have health issues. Where's the street cleaner that everybody's always talking about? They said, it's too dangerous. Nobody can go. It's raining. I said, the rain was like 5 hours ago. It's dry. It's summertime. It's hot. They said, nobody will be there. Nobody. And then I find out on a YouTube video, these guys are saying they had people out there the same day, not where we were. And the call center said that. So then the reason we have up a privacy fence, the cops pull into our house. They come. I've had guns pulled on me as I carried my newborn baby. Boom. Put that gun away, officer. Put that gun away, officer. We need the cops to help, and they come and they abuse us. So we bought a privacy fence so they don't run into our house when they turn around there. So they're always driving fast. I call my daughter. I say, daughter, come, look. You could see like an airplane, the circles. I said, I bet that's a cop. We could see them all the way down the road. Well, everybody in the neighborhood came. They all came to the corner. They all saw the cop with the circles driving so fast. He stops, stares us down, and then he drives away the other way. He stops. He stopped right there in the middle of the road. And he drove. So everybody called the call center. The day the United Way volunteers came, they came. The street cleaner came twice that day when the volunteers were there, right? And this cop came flying by. And I think they just think it's just us, right? Like us, right? You guys know what I mean by this, right? And they come flying by like they always do. And they turn the corner like drifting, Tokyo drift, right? You guys see, you know that term, right? They turn, drift. They see that, because we invited I have back problems. In the morning, they had pizza donated. I said, come on back, and hopefully by then, my back won't hurt. And we made them a huge meal to thank them. So we had all these volunteers that were not this, right? And when the cop came and turned the corner, you could see him plowing down from the north. And one of the volunteers said, hey guys, everybody look at the cop. We got their number and we all reported it to the call center. So a couple weeks later, the police department was called. And they were asked, what's going to happen to these cops, that are throwing dirt around, making unsafe conditions, maybe, kids in the neighborhood. What was going to happen? They said, what are you talking about? We said, we reported it to the call center about the unsafe conditions, the breathing, the dirt. Every time we touched a sandbag, we got pink eye. We all just shared one bottle of medicine. And they said, nothing. There was one report registered, and they just told the officers to slow down. That's it. So that's what I mean by the call center. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions, Council? Councilmember Shimoni.
No, I just want to thank you for being here tonight with your husband and express my condolences for your situation. It sounds extremely stressful and unpleasant, and I really feel for you and the whole neighborhood. And I'd like to follow up with you offline and see what we can do and get, staff in the room and just see how we can better the situation and learn from the experiences that you've had, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'd welcome that and appreciate it. And like I said, it would be a volunteer service because I don't know, as soon as this lawsuit, a scorching Google it, it's when rich people go against poor people because they know they don't have money. So Google it, and as soon as this is over, all we have are our stories and our prayers. So, I mean, I don't, you guys, I don't know. I mean, I'd sure like to get this fixed because my husband cleaned the alley. They said $2 million. He cleaned it for 18 years. And he never got paid. He never got anything except a threat to be thrown in jail for trespassing. So it just, it's to help. He did it to help his neighbors because we didn't flood. They flooded downstream. He did it as a public service, and that's what we're here for, to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Sharon Tewksbury Bloom.
Thank you. My name is Sharon Tewksbury Bloom, and I'm a resident on Grandview Drive in the affected area. I'm also here partially representing Tara Rourke because she is a nurse who's working in our hospital fighting the other crisis that we're dealing with, and she is the one who submitted the petition. But if you have questions about the petition, I can answer those as well. So in terms of what I wanted to say tonight, I've spoken to many of you about the individual issues that I faced with my home flooding and with the threat that we're facing at our residence. So I don't really want to go into that tonight. It's also really re-traumatizing to try to watch videos or hear stories about what happened. So I'd rather not talk about it. What I would like to say is that as our elected representatives, I would just implore you to focus on listening to all of those affected, as well as the experts that you're getting advice from, as well as asking critical questions. Anyone who knows me knows I love to ask questions. And you get to be in meetings I don't get to be in. You get to meet the chief of the U.S. Forest Service and be invited on that tour. I don't get invited on that tour. So I need you to ask the questions that I'm not in the room to ask. So the type of questions I'm talking about, first of all, is reframing the problem. Please help in reframing the problem. We heard an update tonight about big projects that are being planned that are millions of dollars, which is important. It's incredibly important to think about these big infrastructure projects. But that's not the whole picture. There's so many more things that can be done. So if we reframe the problem, for example, what could be done to make these neighborhoods safer? What could be done to make these neighborhoods safer during monsoon season? If we frame it that way, there's other things we could be doing. There's sirens and alert systems, which we've proposed. There's also ways that we could use residents on the street to be the first way of communicating what's happening on the ground when it's not even safe to have people go into the neighborhood. There's other ways that we could be looking at who's actually being injured in these floods. We are incredibly, incredibly lucky that no one died this summer. But there were a lot of people injured, and I don't know that you know that, but a lot of people were injured. So how were they injured, and how could we reduce those injuries, and are we tracking that? There's also things we could be thinking about in terms of critical questions. We heard about all the money that we spent, but bigger picture, what did we lose during these flooding events? We lost housing stock, for one. We're in a housing crisis. What does it mean to lose housing stock in a housing crisis?
Thank you, Sharon. What other critical questions would you
Thank
have?
you. So with the health, for example, we could be thinking about other ways to look at what are the health impacts. So for instance, Dawn was referencing the dust that showed up in their neighborhoods after the flooding. I know I reached out personally to the city about when we're collecting this sediment, could we be putting it directly into dumpsters or onto tarps or onto other things so that it could be captured and it wouldn't be using street sweepers to sweep it up into the air or even be sitting out for long periods of time to sweep it up. Simple things like changing the time of trash pickup in the neighborhoods that are affected. Our trash is picked up at 2 p.m. All the floods happened at either noon or 1 p.m., right around then. So guess what? Lots of residents had their trash cans out. Every single time it seemed to happen on a Tuesday. And those trash cans all went downstream, which is now what we call our streets. And residents were charged to get a new trash can because they lost their trash can. So there are things that could at least be made better, even when we can't fix the bigger problem. We can't, it's a natural problem. It's a huge, complex issue. We can't guarantee that it's not going to flood again, but we can definitely do better.
Thank you, Sharon.
Any other questions?
Councilmember Shimoni.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sharon, again for being here and advocating on behalf of your neighbors and sharing this good insight with us. I just want to let you and other members of the public know that I hope as we continue forward and hopefully bringing this forward to council through work sessions, you all are able, to the best of your ability, to stay engaged and continue to speak up and work with us as we navigate these tricky times. But I think you shared some really good ideas, and I'm really excited to see how this progresses.
You, Councilmember McCarthy.
This is just a very small item, but you just said that you were charged for your trash cans.
I was lucky enough to pull mine in because I work from home, but my neighbor who lives across the street, his went downstream, and yes, he was charged for his trash can.
So when I read the websites that are referenced on the screen there, it said that the city did not charge for trash cans. You're saying that's true?
My understanding is there was a change of policy after residents complained that they thought it was unfair that they were being charged for their trash cans being lost in flooding. But certainly in the first round of flooding and in the trash cans that were lost, we were billed for them.
All right, thank you for that info. Thank you.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. As referenced earlier, there was a suggestion of a liaison. Do you think that would help you and your circumstance? And what would that look like in your mind?
Yes, thank you for asking that. So there's both fixing what currently exists, and there's also creating something new that would be better. So first of all, the County Flood District published a phone number as well as an email address that we were to use. The phone number, the challenges we found out later that it was really for only a few specific issues. And maybe in the very first days it did go to the call center and you might get a call back. If you were dealing with something like a trash can, for example, that wasn't one of the specific issues that they meant that call center to really address. They were trying to address things like people whose sandbags were inadequate and needed a new assessment done and more sandbags placed. So it was communicated as a single point of contact, but it didn't actually function well as a single point of contact because they didn't have answers for all those other questions, and a lot of things were missed and people felt ignored. So a single point of contact makes a lot of sense, but it's how do you staff that? How do you make sure that the person who's being that liaison or being that call center can actually redirect those questions appropriately? And that is difficult because you're dealing with the county and the city and other entities. The other issue is like the email address they put out, turned out it wasn't actually hooked up initially. They put a publication out to residents saying that there were issues with the email wasn't actually receiving email. It could send email, but it didn't function to receive email. So yeah, these systems need to be tested. They need to be making sure that they are adequately staffed. The other thing is that I know Andy Burleson mentioned that he was the co-incident commander. So that, to me, implies that they're using the incident command system, which is what they use during fires and disasters. In an incident command system, you have a designated PIO, Public Information Officer, that's part of the incident command system framework. So if they're using the incident command system framework, they should have a PIO, and that should always be public as to who that is, and it can change, but it would always be published just like they do in a forest fire. So I think that just makes sense. Why wouldn't you just use the same system you're using for other disaster response? Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Sharon. So you're saying that instead of having a general number that people call and leave a message, that there be a specific person that is responsible for fielding all of the phone calls and the emails and responding to residents. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's more than one person could do, at least during monsoon season, so that you would have to think about how you would handle staffing that, but in the ICS system, I think there's a person who handles that set of issues, and they would have other staff working with them. The issue is there's also a few different audiences, so the public information officer generally is more disseminating the latest information and being that public relations person. Then there's more of the answering questions, particularly connecting people to the right city services, because this does touch on so many different services. It's affecting streets, it's affecting water, it's affecting different things. So sometimes you have to figure out how do we connect them. I don't know if it makes sense to have the same person doing both the outreach public part and the connecting to more customer service part. Those might need to be two different functions. The third piece actually is more what Dawn's concern came up about, is that there's no ombudsman, as far as I understand it, that we can relate to if we actually have a real issue where we feel like we were mistreated by a city employee. So I don't know, how does the city handle things if a citizen feels like they were mistreated? So those are three kind of separate issues.
And when you called the call center, did someone answer or did you leave voice messages?
I think I'm the example of when everything functions mostly correctly. So when I called, not only one time I did get an answer directly, the other time I got a call back within 24 hours after leaving a message. The only part of my process that didn't go correctly is that they mislogged the damage that I had. So they put it in the system as only exterior damage on my house. So I was never logged as having interior damage, even though I did. And so they never did an assessment. The amount of damage never made it into the totals that they calculated when they said how much damage happened in the city. I was never sent an application for assistance, because that was only for people that got interior damage. So I know that it's not functioning super well because that happened. And even though I told 5 other people who were all very involved that this had happened to me, no one took the initiative to say, oh, let me connect you with someone who can fix that. So up to this day, it's, as far as I know, it's never been fixed.
And your experience, I think we've had several community meetings, and I heard from a number of people that their calls weren't logged and that they didn't receive phone calls back.
I think it's really difficult to know if your call was logged. That's why we were asking for more of a ticket system where we would be given an actual number that when we called back, if we needed to call back, we could say, I was ticket number XYZ, can you please check and see if anyone's been doing follow-up on that? So, and I saw something in the presentation about it. I'm not sure how you get to it. I mean, a simple example of something that could be improved is like those email addresses that are, or those web addresses that are there, super long. How much does it cost to get museumfloodanswers.com and redirect one of those websites so that it's easier to communicate on radio and at meetings and things? Just simple things that could make it easier.
And you and I had spoken with Lucinda fairly recently, Lucinda Andriotti, and she had indicated that a siren system, that they were looking at purchasing a siren system, correct?
Yeah, the residents had recommended looking into a siren system similar to like tornado sirens, because one of the concerns we have is that, sure, we have the text message alerts, which are very helpful, but we also have a lot of young children who live in the neighborhood. And there is nothing currently, and there is nothing that is being proposed tonight that I understand would make the streets safer for small children in summer of 2022. The big infrastructure projects, which will do the most good, just won't be able to move that fast. We don't get the funding, we don't have the feasibility studies done, we can't get the work done to make a significant enough change that those flash flood levels would be down enough that it wouldn't still be a huge danger to small children. So one thing that could make a big difference, we think, is to have a warning system that is something simple enough and public enough that even a child could be trained, hey, if you hear this sound, it's time to run on home. It's time to get inside. Because, a lot of kids have cell phones these days, but even the young kids don't necessarily have a smartphone in their pocket getting text message alerts. And we're just playing in our yards. I'm talking about kids playing in their own front yards or in areas where it's not unusual for them to be.
Thank you, Sharon.
Any other questions?
I think we have a couple people online to be able to speak as well, so we can start tuning them in.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have 3 online speakers. We're going to go ahead and start with B. Rodriguez. B, if you'd like to turn your camera on and unmute, you can go ahead and give your comments now.
Okay. Yad my name is B. I am 15 years old. I lost my bed, couch, and shoes to the floods, and I still haven't replaced them. No one knows what work the city is doing on Dorsa this month, but the APS poles need to be changed to cement ones because the next flood that comes is going to destroy it, and it's going to send 7,000 volts to the flood area. I don't want to die or lose my internet. When the government built the roads in Sunnyside, they built them so that our home is below the grade of the roadway. The water from our yard could not go down the road anymore. The slope to our neighbor's yard is horizontal, so my dad told the engineers the water would fill our yard like a pool. The engineers told my dad to work with the flow of the water. He drilled a small hole in our privacy fence to the alley like they said. New sandbags are by the fence in the alley without the small holes. Shouldn't the new engineers follow the same AmeriCorps engineering guidelines like we did for our neighbors? I asked to speak with you today because I hope this new information can help you make changes for our friends. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, B, and thank you for bringing up the APS and the power lines there. That's very important for us to be paying attention to and communicating. So thank you, B.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker is Ramiro Rodriguez. Ramiro,
Yeah. My name is Ramiro. I am 11 years old. The flood was fun to watch, but it is way too soon for me to learn how to be painting, shoveling, and wheelbarrowing mud. Sunnyside needs one bridge at Dorsa. My mom drove us to the west side and showed us that every road in every neighborhood along the Rio de Flag has bridges. My grandpa's friends said when they were little, Rose Street used to flood. When Grandpa's friends found out that my dad fixed the flooding for 18 years by cleaning the alley for our neighbors, they got mad because the government lied to them. My dad can't do this so good anymore because of his health. Thanks to the fire, The government finally cleaned the alley on November 15th. It is nice that my dad doesn't have to clean the alley and I don't have to be scared that the government will take him to jail if he cleans it, because they always say they will. Please keep cleaning the alley. I asked to speak to you today because I hope all this new information can help you to help our friends. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And what was your first name again? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Ramiro?
Ramiro? Thank you, Ramiro. I appreciate you speaking to us today.
All right, our last speaker is Betty Hernandez.
Okay. Yate, good afternoon. My name is Betty Hernandez, and I'm presenting suggestions for technical criteria for DORTHA, and they are immediate and proven techniques. They are also inexpensive, so that they should meet the financial criteria. They're very simple things that the authorities can do to help ease some of the problems with the flooding. Number one, DORTHA needs the grate removed, cemented, and it needs to have cement put on the sides, a chain link fence for safety, and like they have on Route 66 behind Chris Double D Tire. DORTHA also needs, this is number two, needs Jersey barriers stacked too high. That's too high by the drain on the west side of the alley that needs to be dug deeper, like that of Arroyo Seco. Number three, there is a vacant or taken lot next to the apartments behind DORTHA that needs to be reclaimed by the city so that they could use it for access to DORTHA from Rose Street. And number four, Main Street is being used by the government for flood mitigation. So the Jersey barriers need to be adjusted correctly. Number five, all the debris being channeled down the mountain is bottlenecked at DORTHA. Nothing is working so far, so eventually opening everything up and protecting the immediate residents should be considered an option. Legal is another one of the four criteria for this disaster. All major Northern Arizona engineer companies are partners with the government. These partners should visit every household in the area and give advice on how to protect their property and answer their questions. A walkthrough of this area can be arranged to discuss this further if you would like. So if you want to set up an appointment to take a in-person walking tour to show what needs to be done, you could make an appointment with Dawn Rodriguez, who is in the audience today. You can also reach her by phone at 928-522-3447. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez. And I believe that is our last speaker.
Yes,
Just to
Mayor, that's
confirm.
our last online speaker. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will then turn it back to us, council, for any questions we may have about presentation and so forth. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff, well, first of all, let me thank you all, staff, for all of the work that you've been doing and these updates. It's very much appreciated. And to our speakers, thank you so much for taking time out of your days to come and speak to us about your personal experience, because it's very helpful. It helps us to envision what your life is looking like day to day. And I know that you've been severely impacted, and for that I'm sorry that you had such an incredibly stressful summer, and looks like winter. Staff, just now you said that the DORTHA project, that you hope to have it completed by the start of monsoons. And I could have misunderstood, but I thought that I heard you originally tell me that it was going to be completed by the end of the year.
Initially, the project was slated for this fall, and I think that's the source of hearing that it would be done by the end of the year. The project has obviously morphed, and the engineers can speak to that, and it has been enhanced, as Ed alluded to earlier. Examples would include the placement of concrete and some other improvements. It will be completed before the monsoon season. I'm going to be clear on that, and you can rest assured that that will be the case. It's a high priority for us. It's budgeted, and I can think of nothing more urgent at this time than seeing that project completed.
Thank you. And
yeah, Vice Mayor, this is Andy Bertelson, Water Services Director, and I can continue to answer that question. And as City Manager Clifton had noted, we've added some scope to it to ensure that we don't build something and then go in and it's recommended through the feasibility analysis that we rip it up and do something different. We want to make sure we do it the correct way. So.
Thank you. And where are we with funding of all of the other projects within the city limits that you've listed and kind of described?
I would let the city manager answer that, and I believe Rick Tatter's in the audience as well.
Rick can provide details. We have funding for the Dortha Inlet improvements, the channel improvements, and we believe the funding is falling into place for the Killip detention basin and the diversion that will go to and from. That one's a work in progress, but we are moving quickly on that. The Killip project also needs to be completed by summer, during summer, prior to the opening of the school year, which will be in August of next year. So both those are high priority projects.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. The few projects that were initially talked, I guess let's go back to that slide if we can. This list of projects here are, I believe, unfunded in the Stormwater 5-year plan, with the exception of the Killip School Detention Basin. We are doing our best effort to figure out how to fund that within the Stormwater Fund. It will take a debt issuance because the cash flow is not there at this time, but we are working with the school district to figure out that, as well as paying for the feasibility study. But I believe all these other ones on this list are unfunded. We've had conversations about bringing these forward as a bond election next November. This list will be provided to the committee to consider whether they'd like to forward this for consideration next November also. So that's the current status. They really are unfunded at this time.
Thank you. I have one more question. At one point in one of the neighborhood meetings, we had talked about various resident notification, and along with the siren, we had talked about putting up bulletin boards in areas where we had access to land to do so. Is that still on the table and being discussed?
It is, and a dynamic, we had mentioned a team effort and a team environment, so co-incident commander, for whatever that's worth, with Lucinda Andreani at the Flood Control District, in county emergency management. And so the call center coordinated through that incident management team, the emergency operations center, and utilizing resources to do that as function through county emergency management. We, the city, are not built or equipped to manage those emergencies solely and individually by ourselves. We're just not. So on the siren effort, it's our understanding that county emergency management is looking into that and is looking at putting in a siren. We didn't report on that today, as that's a county emergency management focus, so we're sorry we didn't report on that. And in terms of bulletin boards, we did put out signs in various locations. They would get washed up with the floods, like on Cedar and Maine. I think we would put a sign there, it would get washed down. So we're going to look at putting signs out where we can, those road closed signs, local traffic only. There is a lot of dust that gets stirred up after those flooding events, and a lot of it has to do with people looky-loos, if you will, people driving through the neighborhood and stirring up that dust. So we're going to look at all the ways to manage those efforts going forward. Lucinda Andriani couldn't be on the call this evening, but as we were hearing from our citizens, I was communicating with her some things that we need to better prepare for next year. I think, for what it's worth, you're not asking the question, but Sharon Tewksbury Bloom had talked about the liaison effort, and so I think that's a great idea. We have the Museum Flood Coalition, and we're hopeful that that group will be able to find their footing and serve as that liaison with us. And if we had a liaison as well, again, the city wasn't structured for that in our communications. We do have the PIO in the Emergency Operations Center. That often was a county person, and the county was running that call center. And we were working with them to ensure that our residents were getting served the best we could. So we appreciate the feedback, and we're going to keep working on those issues going forward in those response efforts.
And do you have steps outlined to meet with residents and answer these questions? And I know we're all frustrated,
right.
But there are questions that continue to be asked, and I guess the residents aren't getting answers because they continue to ask the questions. And so what are we doing to get those answers to them in a frequent and comprehensive way?
I think a city manager could help with that.
Please.
I think it needs to be a multitude of things. I don't think there's one answer to that. It's a very good question. I do want to start by noting we've been taking efforts to meet with residents out there. We're not meeting with all of them, but there's been a couple of efforts at more larger meetings that haven't been fruitful, but there have been a lot of smaller group dialogues that have been occurring either in person or by text, phone calls, and what have you. It's not enough, but I do want to at least leave the impression that efforts are being extended to have communications out there. I think, and the mayor and I discussed this earlier today, and it's been touched on in this presentation, work session presentations are effective. People can attend virtually and participate without having to be here in person, or they can be here in person as we've had today. We probably should structure those on a regular basis going forward and have them serve as updates as to what's going on. You're getting a lot of information tonight, but we can continue to provide updates on this very important information. That could be bi-monthly, similar to how we've been reporting on the Rio de Flag progress. Maybe that could be reported on in tandem with museum fire, museum flood mitigation progress. And there are other things to talk about. The Fry project, which has morphed, and we know that. But basically, the fire thinning, the forest thinning and management endeavors to help mitigate the flooding there's a direct nexus between that and what we're talking about here. So those updates, I think, would be helpful. And there's other stormwater issues around the community. So there is a myriad of topics related to this. I'm not trying to diminish the importance of what the people of Grandview and Sunnyside neighborhoods are dealing with directly right now. I'm just saying there's a lot we could and should be reporting on in tandem with that. In addition to a regular work session type update, and there would be opportunity for dialogue in that, and we heard reference to the website postings, but we've also heard not everybody has access to computers, so that's convenient for some, but not for all. We, I think, should explore the opportunity of having hard copy flyers distributed throughout the neighborhoods on occasion and have those be bilingual so that the residents out there could, if they're not able to access by website or attend these meetings virtually, they can at least read to see what is going on in the neighborhoods. I don't know how frequent those could occur. I don't think it would be a very frequent endeavor, but certainly something that could and should happen on an occasional basis. So hard copy flyers, website postings, a regular update in front of this council, and I think continued presence in the neighborhoods, whether that be through a public relations liaison or through us directly, or both. I think those are effective means. I want to take the opportunity, since we're on the topic, to clarify. We do have a PIO, and we had a PIO this summer and throughout the event. That position has changed in terms of the person who occupies it, but the function has not. The PIO remains a critical part of this, so that was instituted this summer during the event and after the event, and I think was an effective means of outreach. But that is just an outreach effort, and really what we're talking about now is more of an exchange of information between us and the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Well, I know that several of us went door to door in the neighborhoods and were at these neighborhood meetings, and I can only speak for myself, but I'm assuming that others feel the same way. If you need volunteer efforts to take things door to door, I know we don't have staff resources to do stuff like that, but I think that most of us would be willing to do that, and also willing to help recruit additional volunteers to do it, whatever it takes to better communicate with the neighborhood and to get some of their concerns addressed and taken care of.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first of all, I want to thank the city manager for putting this on the agenda, and I hope that we can do this again on a somewhat regular basis. It's really important. Also want to thank all the staff people for being here and being very informative. In my mind, at least, there's at least one disconnect. If we look at this chart that's on the screen right now, when staff talked about that, I was under the impression that those are the things that we're going to be doing in the fairly near future. But then at the same time, I've heard that we don't have funding for the items on that list. So that's a disconnect that I don't understand. Are we going to be doing those things, or we're not going to be able to do them because we don't have the money? That's my first question.
Would you like me to address that now?
I don't see anybody else standing up, so please do.
I'll take a stab at it and invite others to correct me. It's not a yes/no answer. There are some projects on the list that we're seeing that are funded or will be funded and are in the queue to be completed in the near term being defined as between now and the next monsoon season. There are many on the list that go beyond that. And the feasibility study, along with the modeling that Scott Overton made reference to, will help inform how those projects are designed and more importantly, how they are prioritized in the future. I think it's a given that we won't be able to do everything at one time. There has to be a sequence to how these projects are done. The projects that are being performed immediately have been on the table for a while, first of all. Second of all, there's a window of opportunity that we have to seize here with respect to the Killip School construction and the detention basins that Scott made reference to. That opportunity goes away once the school is completed. So that one's urgent, along with the Dortha Inlet projects, which again have been on the table, as the Vice Mayor pointed out. And that was scheduled prior to the monsoon season. That was scheduled for work this year, but now is changed a bit and it's been enhanced, but it's still urgent. So Dortha Inlet improvements and the Killip Basin are happening as near-term projects. The other projects you see on that list, many of them will be subject to strategizing as to when and how we pay for them. And the big question of how we pay for them is one that will be coming back to the council. It goes without saying that we will pursue all resources to try to fund these projects as quickly as possible. We do need to assist in our formulation of that strategy with the feasibility study that's being conducted and the modeling that's being conducted. It's very important to have that information at hand as we endeavor to complete all of these projects into the future. And by the way, those studies will be completed in the spring. So this is not a thing that's way out there. We'll have that information in the months ahead. That will in turn inform how we prioritize and schedule these projects. And then the big question mark, how do we fund the projects? Stay tuned on that one.
So in my next question, I don't think I'm going to ask for an answer tonight, but I think it's a question that we need to address at some point, and that's very simple. When can I take the sandbags away from my driveway? So that's a question that I think, it's not my driveway because I don't live in this area. Maybe Mr. Overton can answer because he's walking up here. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, council member. It's a fair question. We get it a lot from our residents, and everyone's tired of our answer. And that is, we evaluate this system currently in place as a short-term mitigation. 700,000 sandbags and 6 miles of barrier. It's working effectively. We've had issues. We've made modifications. This was our first summer of test. The city engineers, and they are with us as well, the county engineers, the private engineer teams, we've all been consistent in the thinking they stay in place. They stay in place until mid or long-term measures can be evaluated and installed and implemented. It could be some time, but the advice today is consistent, and it needs to remain consistent that the short-term measures are best to stay in place as an effective means to protect property.
So it might be that the answer to that question, and first of all, I know neither you nor I really know the answer to that question at this point, but I think a goal would be by next summer, but even that might not be realistic.
Yep. It's not, and we have not put timeline on it. Every mitigation we do improves the system, but the short-term measures are just that. They're short-term, they're emergency. They were put in place 2 years ago. We shored them up every summer. We'll continue to shore them up until we continue to advocate for more mid and long-term solutions, but I don't want to send a mixed signal here. The short-term measures are recommended to stay in place, and that is a strong recommendation, as we have seen exactly what happens when we get large-scale rain events.
Okay, Scott, I appreciate your honesty on that.
Absolutely.
Don't leave.
Okay.
This next question might be for you. As seen on that slide there's a lot of discussion about things that we're going to be doing in the city. So my question now is, are there things that are going to be done on the forest? And if so, what are those? I don't think we've touched on those tonight.
So we didn't spend a lot of time on them, but we did talk, Andy quickly talked about this. The funding that our Forest Service representation and our congressional delegation secured was the $3.5 million to be utilized on forest. What we didn't talk about is what's being implemented, and that's a fair question. It's in conceptual design, and I don't know, is Ed or Sam, do you want to speak to it? I can speak to it, I just don't want to hog it totally up.
No, so
give it an effort.
No, and he's 100% right. So the whole purpose of that is on previous floods, like when we had Schultz, we had this huge, not huge, but a significant area of land from the base of the watershed to the first impacted areas, right? So now we don't have that. So watershed damage and flows based on what we have to work with isn't nearly enough. So what they're trying to do is reach into the Forest Service, get some of that area in a sense of a alluvial fan or a basin. They're still working on that concept just because the money was just given out. But they're trying to work in partnership to see what will actually be feasible in there at this point. The land mass is only so much, right? That 40-acre parcel we said was eligible in there, it's still only 40 acres for that amount of water that's coming off of there. And the one thing we have to remember is every time it flows, it changes the dynamic. It's not a standard that's set, and we're just working off one standard. Every time it rains on it, it changes that set of parameters that we're working off of. So we're trying to do as much as we can to get ahead of that. But realistically, that's what they're trying to get done up top with the flood control district. They're working on that 40-acre parcel. They're working on that Forest Service piece, and they're doing their best to stay ahead of it. They've been working in Mount Eldon Estates. A lot of that in there was channel stabilization, just because it's a private subdivision. They're trying to support them as much as they can, but there's a lot of moving pieces in that. But a lot of stuff trying to get done up top, because realistically, that's where it has to get done. It's a system of mitigation. It needs to work as a system as it comes down. If we design something on the bottom and we change something up top, we threw everything away at the bottom. So that feasibility study is so important to have all that information lined out in order. If we jump around, we'll fail. So we just need to make sure we work together and we work in a system.
All right, so I guess I'll just kind of close this item out by saying that we've talked in somewhat detail what's happening in the city. Maybe the next time we get together, we could, if we know by then, we can talk about in a little more detail what's being done on Forest Service land. You know, are we putting in dams, or are we putting in something to divert the water out and spread it out, or whatever? Okay, my last question, and this is maybe for Shannon, I don't know. You know, on the website that I read, it said that if people's trash cans floated away, they got free ones. And now I'm hearing, well, that's true now, but it wasn't true before. So maybe we can change the answer on those websites to reflect that, and tell me if I'm right, is that initially we were charging people, but now our policy is that if their trash can washed away in a flood, that we give them a new one for no charge.
Yeah, so my understanding, Councilmember McCarthy, is that we did do research to try and double check that folks weren't charged. I did hear Sharon's comments, so my plan is to follow up with her and get specific names so we can look for those individuals specifically, because we have tried to double check that folks were not charged if they were in this flood area and they were losing their can as a result of that flood. Scott, I don't know if you want to add anything further.
No, and that's correct. We have heard that at the citizens' meetings as well, and Todd Hansen, your solid waste director, had gone back. They had checked through the records. We have charged no one from that area, so we'd be happy to hear if someone did inadvertently get charged, or we can find, you know, that person that's reporting that. We're happy to chat with them. We, in addition, sent one of our solid waste managers door to door on Grandview, and he made contact with as many residents as possible. We were hearing these comments, and again, could not find anyone that had been billed. So again, I don't want to say it's not accurate, but if we can get better information, we will follow up. But no one should be penalized for living in this area. We understand there's issues and there's operational issues, but certainly not the city's intent nor policy to, you know, charge someone for a trash can that they had no way to contain during a flood event. So please reach out to Public Works. We'll make sure we address the issue, and if someone does need that refund, we'll take care of that. But we also want to make sure they get trash and recycle service. So we've made sure that everyone has those receptacles as they've been requested.
Yeah, so the root issue here is we need to make sure that our answers on those websites are accurate.
Yeah, and the frequently asked document, it is reflective of what we know from Public Works. We provided the answer, and it is accurate, in my opinion. But clearly, we're hearing additional people that may have different interpretation of that, so we'll work through that.
And then I'll just say one more thing, and then I'll shut up for a while. We had a citizen suggestion that instead of picking up the trash at 3 in the afternoon, which is when the floods come, that maybe in that area we could pick up the trash first thing in the morning, 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and then people could put their trash cans away. Two things. One is that if there is a flood, then there be less chance of the trash being washed down the street. And also, if we can get those trash cans off the street, which are kind of restricted anyway, that would help traffic flow.
Yeah, we certainly can look at operational
Okay.
hours, and that's not an issue.
And I don't know if that's under you, Scott, but
It is in Public Works.
do you handle almost everything?
No, sir. It's a lot of folks involved.
Yes. All right, Scott, you're doing a great job. Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Shimoni.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just first off thank our staff at the city and our partners at the county for all the hard work you all have been doing, and then the public members here in person, online, and at home. This is a tough conversation, and I'm glad we're having it. And I think that we are going to continue moving forward. So I just had a couple quick comments. I do support us having further conversations on this topic at work sessions. I really view this similarly to COVID updates and discussions we've had around COVID. And I would recommend once a month. I think that's appropriate. And I think that would be really good. I think that the time of that agenda item needs to be late enough that people who have kids and are working can attend. Like maybe saying that we will start that conversation at 5 or 5:30, which I know is late for us, but that's a time that working people, I think, can attend. And from folks I'm talking to in the community that are part of this neighborhood, they've asked that I advocate for a later start that is clear and communicative as to when they need to be here so they can be here. So I don't know if that's something we can do, but I think that's important to have clear communication and work on these issues. I totally support a consultant to help with the communication and would ask that we really come up with a communication strategy that, includes a whole range of approaches. I'm glad to hear that there's potentially progress being made on the sirens and that they may, I know Andy talked to the county working on that, and I'd love to hear an update on that maybe at our next meeting and where that's at. Another idea that was brought to my attention was community boards, and that we maybe could use maybe 4 or 5 community boards around the region that is impacted to just clearly communicate updates and information, et cetera. I don't think that'd be too expensive to do, but I think that could go a long way in communication. And I really appreciate what Sharon, who's here from the public, spoke to about the viewpoint of public health and safety. And I'd like for us to look through that lens a little bit more moving forward and discuss through that lens. I think that has a lot of value in my eyes. And then lastly, Councilmember McCarthy, I agree with all the comments you made about trash, and I'm appreciative to Scott and his team for working on that, especially the timing. I'm really glad to hear that we might be able to work around that and maybe put those neighborhoods at the front of the list and then get back on the regular routine moving forward of a schedule. I think that's all my comments right now. I just think it's so important that we continue these conversations regularly. And again, that time start point, I think, is really important for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shimoni. I do have a few questions, but Councilmember Aslan with the other council members.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll go ahead and take a moment to came off again. I've been fairly quiet just because I've been trying to actively listen right now. There's a lot of good ideas floating around. Very appreciative of the things we're hearing from the public. And I know everyone is listening and taking down notes, and there's going to be a lot of sharing of notes after the meeting tonight. Thank you for putting this together. Very much appreciated the comments I've heard from the dais. I think I agree with all of them. And I just want to take a moment to do 2 things. And one is just to personally acknowledge the stories that we've heard tonight. It was particularly wonderful to hear the Navajo perspective represented. And the youth voice as well. The 2 young speakers tonight who, one of them utilized Legos to sort of make the point. It brought a tear to my eye, and it was just so clear that this isn't about budget numbers. It's not about spreadsheets. It's not about workflows. This is about families, and it's about people. And I want everyone to know that I incorporate that, and I hear that, and I know that we all do. The monsoon season for me, I can't speak for other cultural perspectives, but I can speak personally. has always been an exciting time. I have cherished growing up in Arizona and experiencing the monsoon season every year. It's a time of renewal, it's a time of refreshment and cleansing. It's dramatic, it's exciting, and other parts of the world don't have monsoon seasons like that. So it's really heavy for me to think about putting myself in the shoes of a resident or a homeowner in these neighborhoods who suddenly experience all of this as a nightmare. It's doubly tragic in that way. I can only imagine how this progressed from a terrible inconvenience of sandbags to a never-ending nightmare over the course of 3 summers. And I don't know how I'd handle it, but I know it would weigh on me greatly. And I know it takes its toll in more ways than we can account for in a budget sheet. The grief here is greater than the sum of its parts, and I'm very deeply sympathetic to everybody's suffering out there. I wanted to mention something else too. I sit up here and I like to kind of see myself as one of Council's climate action champions. I embrace that role and I lean into it because somebody has to do that. The events on the mountain that led directly to the nightmare on your street are related, without a doubt, to changing conditions and larger patterns that have resulted over time in drier forests and increased fire risk. And I have a personal laser focus on climate mitigations, adaptations, and carbon dieting, because those policies are critical to winning the long-term fight in all of Flagstaff's neighborhoods, and in fact, all neighborhoods everywhere, period. But I really want to be heard right now. Those policies are not going to save your streets. I want you all to know that I know that. So we need an approach that can do 2 things at once. We must be able to nimbly respond to the situation on Grandview and Sunnyside for anything else we're doing to count. And I hope you hear me when I say that I understand that we cannot invest in one strategy over the other, and that your concerns and the frustrations of your neighbors are just as important to me as those of future generations. So I will do whatever I can to facilitate the city's direct, forceful, and hasty response. And I thank you all for your patience and your generosity of spirit, even when it has not been earned. And I just want to say one more thing. The approach needs to be equitable. We have to focus on all the houses up and down the floodway in concert. This is the only way to approach the problem, and I do hope and trust that neighbors throughout the area share that generosity of spirit and that patience that is required to make sure that these improvements we make don't have negative impacts on others along the way. But I'm committed, and I know all 7 of us up here are committed to pushing solutions to be implemented as quickly as humanly possible. And I know that our staff and our city leadership are eager to get to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you. And I do want to extend my gratitude again for everyone that's in the audience and online, and to our leadership. The occurring theme tonight for me is just good communication, whether that's with sirens or an easier website address or a better call center. And I want to make sure that our future meetings are meaningful and what the public is desiring. And I am all in for work sessions and addressing the real questions here. And I just want to leave with one thing. I did go to several of the community meetings, and I remember I had to climb over a wall at one of them. And I have small, tiny legs, and that wall to get to the meeting was pretty tough for me to navigate. So my heart goes out to the community who is affected, and believe me, I think about this often. And you have us with you, and we're here and we're listening, and I look forward to moving forward with good communication and thoughtful movements forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sweet. I have a few questions here for staff. First of all, I would like to give my thumbs up to the once a month meeting work session where we're discussing this. When I was mentioning it to city manager, I wanted to also include the Fry, the Rio de Flag, and get a full picture of what we are looking at as a city for flood mitigations as well as fire preventions. I think with all of this, we need to be more proactive about, and I know we have done a lot in that regard in certain areas, but as we think about the whole city flooded this summer. And we need to get the large picture as well as deal with the situation we have at hand here. So I just want to, as we have these meetings, have our pulse in for the city as a whole, while we also are looking at the very specific and very top priority situation we have for Grandview. But there's a lot of things in the works with Fry, et cetera, that we need to be apprised of at these meetings. So that's just my add-on, but I'm in support of. I do have questions about funding, and I don't know if this is better directed to Rick or to Stacy BK if she is here, but the infrastructure bill included $8.25 billion for Arizona's post-wildfire flooding mitigation as well as fire mitigation in general. And I'm just wondering, first off, on timelines in which we are going to need to be applying for these. I mean, we definitely need a feasibility study, so we're not redoing projects like we are at Linda Vista, doubling and then doubling again now right away. So that's extremely important. But what is our time window for being able to access the infrastructure bill funds so that hopefully we can move on this in a far faster pace? Well, at least with resources in hand.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Stacy Buckernaggs is on the line, but we are putting this.
Hi, Rick.
Hey, Stacy, just a second.
No, keep going, but I am here.
Okay, thanks. We are putting this as part of the conversation for the budget retreat, so you'll see that on the agenda as far as the infrastructure plan. Of course, it will take time to get through all the allowable uses of that plan. It's fairly new as far as what we provided, but Stacy, you want to provide a little more detail and background on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, I've been on a number. Hi, Mayor and Council. Stacy Buckernaggs, Grants and Contracts Manager. And yeah, I've been on a number of webinars and receiving information from National League of Cities. It looks like it's going to be kind of a mixed bag of some allocations to the state, some that will be competitive grants that they'll be rolling out, and so we're kind of just monitoring, but nothing now that's available to apply for at this time.
Okay, so the feasibility study coming in the spring is not going to interfere with a time window for getting grants.
No, it actually.
No, I believe not.
Cool.
Probably
Okay.
Actually, benefit us to have that completed. This
Yeah,
spring,
yeah, that's
so we can provide the details. So timing's probably good.
okay. I just wanted to check on that because obviously that's a large pool of funds coming our direction, and we should at least in my mind, be a priority for how these state monies are going to be allocated, or federal monies through the state. The other part about this I wanted to ask as well is, I guess not ask, but I wanted to make sure we were aware, because there was questions about what's going on north of the town, that it's not, so they received $3.5 million from the Forest Service for Forest Service land. Now there's an additional $3.5 million that was just granted. So as of the last 2 weeks, there's a total of $7 million to assist with the sediment reduction north of town. And I just wanted to confirm, Am I correct in saying that?
That's
just to
correct,
confirm?
Mayor.
Okay, because there was some confusion because 3.5 mil, whether it was the same pool of money or not.
It's a separate pool, and Mayor, if I could elaborate on that.
Yes,
so
thanks.
2 weeks ago today, when the Forest Chief was here and announced that the Forest Service would be funding the on-forest measures and made that commitment day of, Natural Resources Conservation Service, NRCS representatives were there as well, said that the funding application was in process but was not able to make that commitment. Since that time, within the last 2 weeks, NRCS has made that commitment to allocate those funds as well. And that was a project that Sam had noted.
That's the one that funds this project.
Thank you.
This one.
Yeah.
And this one's in the city limits, just adjacent to Paradise. But this is the second 3.5 million.
This, and then Mount Eldon Estates just above this in the county portion. So that was a long way of answering your question. 2 separate pots of funds, yes. 3.5 million from the Forest Service, 3.5 million from Natural Resources Conservation Service, for a total of about 7 million.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thanks for letting me elaborate.
Yeah, I appreciate it. A few things else, other things I wanted to touch on is we really need to address our IT system for handling these emergencies. I mean, with a call center, even having 6 numbers, press 2 if you're dealing with issues with your waste management, press 3. I mean, there's some easy fixes, I would think, that we could help direct calls to the appropriate entities. If this is about sandbags, so forth, so on, please stay on the line and the operator will be able to assist you. Also, we're hearing about the ticketing and so forth that would be extremely helpful, but in general, I think this would help a lot with communication breakdowns and making sure that it goes to the appropriate party, as well as, help a lot of the residents at the community meeting. One of the big things was that they don't know how much their house was assessed for. Like, they had the assessor come but didn't get a follow-up and didn't really know how to get that information back. So that might be a way where, you can input your water bill code or account number, and it will pull up your residence for how much your house was assessed for. So I'm just saying that I think that if we start to do some investments and testing right now for our IT system, it's going to make next summer, hopefully we won't need it next summer, but future summers a lot more streamlined for these communication processes that I think is extremely important.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for that. And as we were hearing the citizen comments, I was communicating with Carol Dykes at United Way of Northern Arizona. She's on the phone as well. Extremely helpful in those coordinated volunteer efforts during the events. And we always say there's a lot that we as a local government can't fill those needs or can't accomplish. So, for example, if Scott and I and others are focused on, do we need to close Cedar or, closing roads at the same time? Are we making sure that we're working with everyone appropriately out into the community, those 400 homes, 35 businesses? We could have absolutely done a better job with that. So how do we put our structure in place to be able to do that? And as you had mentioned, Vice Mayor, we had engineers out giving those assessments, and nothing against our engineering teams. They're good people with those good intentions, but we're not always the best professional communicators when it comes to on-the-street community citizen issues. So that liaison idea is a really good one. And so we want to be able to make sure that we're doing that appropriately and learning where we didn't do that. So we all have a role to play, and we get caught in those roles and don't always play the ones that we're not as good at so well. So how do we have that structure in place to be able to do that and organize our community in such a way that's helpful?
Thank you. And then I wanted to mention regarding Deputy City Manager, did you?
Yeah, just to respond to the call center. So we certainly can take notes, but the call center has been a flood control district resource So it isn't necessarily something that our IT team can implement for that system, but we certainly can pass this along and see what kind of updates we can make. In response to the assessment, that's been a question that's come up, and it is in the FAQs that folks can contact Amy Palmer and get the specifics of their assessments. And so since it's come up a few times in our conversation, I thought it might be good to verbalize that so people listening will know that it's there in the city services FAQ.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Shannon. I'm sorry I missed that. And I was trying to explain that earlier. I didn't do as good of a job with it. And a word that Carol threw out to me that I have to remember is we focus on response. Let's also talk about recovery, right? And so how do we structure ourselves towards that recovery effort? And that's a different concept than just pure response.
I like that. And also on the communication front, I know there was discussion about the billboards and that, hey, they might get washed away or whatnot, but I think there are locations that we can utilize, for example, on Ponderosa Park, up on the chain link fence, or at the rec center a few feet up, billboard placed, areas that it's not just freestanding, but some on our own city government property that we can then make it easy to pop on there for more information, or when it does come time to respond, that we can provide the information there for the community.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. And another thing I thought about, a few emails had gone out this week, and then the mailing. Again, that focus, and Sharon pointed this out, is on kind of the larger effort. Hey, we have this funding that we had just talked about to be able to do these on-forest measures, but it's not focusing on the recovery piece. It's as Sharon had noted, it's focused on these larger scale efforts that we're initiating and keeping the ball rolling. But in terms of communication on the street and that recovery effort, there are some things that we could be doing that's getting probably lost in that communication because we're focused on those larger initiatives, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So just thinking about that and how we can incorporate.
Thank you, Andy. The other part that came up tonight was regarding the APS, the electrical on the Dorothy Inlet. Have we had conversations, or other conversations going on about that?
We have, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. There are, I hate to say utility conflicts, but there are utilities lining the channels in various locations, and it does pose difficulties. There is that pole in Dorothy. In that channel that we need to solidify, and so that's part of the timeline for that project is those utility conflicts, and it's problematic, but our utilities have generally been on board with these projects. But with any major project, it's pretty common to have those.
Excellent. Yep. Thank you. Any other further questions for staff at this time? Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a comment. First of all, just gratitude to the conversation that has transpired today, and some of the action steps moving forward, in terms of improving communication, having this discussion on a regular basis in a work session. Thank you, Team Flagstaff. Thank you to our partners with the county. But I also want to express gratitude and heart to the members of our community who are here in person and those who heard online. I share your pain. I share your trauma. If you're not aware, I was born and raised in the Philippines. When I was 14, I moved to the big city and went to junior, senior, and then college in the big city of Manila, where flooding was an annual event for us, me as a student, and waiting on knee-deep and waist-deep flood to go to school was our normal for 2 months in the monsoon season. But then June 1991 happened when a volcanic eruption, Mount Pinatubo, hit my original region in Pampanga. And I and my family and my entire village and my entire city experienced evacuation in the middle of volcanic ashes and stones falling from the sky and flooding. So I carried my 8-month-old cousin fleeing from that flooding with the rest of our village. And then of course, there's that volcanic eruption that destroyed millions of properties and damages. And then 4 years after the volcanic eruption, another disaster happened. Typhoon, and then the volcanic ashes called lahar flowed down from the mountain and wiped out an entire town of 15,000 residents. 2-story houses, relocating the entire city. So I share your frustration and pain and trauma. And I know we have a lot of work to do as individuals, as families, as elected officials, as a government. But please let us work together. Let us keep the faith. And I just happened to look again. We have this in front of us. At the beginning of the meeting, we mentioned the mission of the city of Flagstaff, right? To protect and enhance the quality of life for all. But then I chanced upon the vision of the city of Flagstaff. It's a safe, diverse, just, vibrant, and innovative community with a unique character and quality of life for all. So let's work together. And I will be here, continue listening and working as an individual community member and as your council member to make our quality of lives better. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Anything else on this topic at this point? All right, I'll just wanted to mention too, I know you all are on it, but I think these sirens are going to be really necessary and tested before next monsoon season. There's too many cases of people, when I was knocking on the doors and the trailers and so forth, these folks don't even have any technology, no cell phones, nothing. There is no way to communicate. It's not just about the children who are playing that need to be notified. It's so many in the neighborhood that don't have access to technology. So again, I know a lot of this stuff is under the county's jurisdiction, and I appreciate us continuing to make sure they're reminded of the things that we would like to see for our residents.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I keep jumping up, but I do have an update on the sirens. So it's my understanding that our county emergency manager, Wes Dyson, has been working with Chief Gaylord, our emergency manager, and our fire chief. And so Wes is working to get DFFM, which is Sam?
It's the Department of Fire and Forestry Management.
Department of Fire and Forestry Management to fund that siren system. So again, we just keep working on all the angles and all the funding partners and agencies to try and implement those projects. So sorry to jump in, but it sounds like that's moving forward in a positive way.
Excellent. I appreciate the update on that.
I'll just add to his if you don't mind real quick.
Yeah, please do. And if you could just make sure to speak
I'll
into
try
the
and
mic.
get closer to the mic here. So I know that the Emergency Management Department has actually spec'd out 3 different systems. Those agencies have all come in, and they've decided on one specific one. They are just working on the funding piece. We've even gone all the way back to Michigan to see how these are operating. It's been moving along. It's the funding piece that they're working on, very, very close. We're waiting again from DFFM. We'll know hopefully within the next couple weeks where that stands, but the county emergency management, and he's correct, with Chief Gaillard working on that very closely. So we're really hoping for good movement on that.
Excellent. Thank you, Sam.
Mayor, I do have one more question. Since we're here, I might as well ask it. I realize we're maybe getting into a mode where we have this discussion on a monthly basis. And so maybe we can get more of an answer to this question at the next meeting. I don't think there's any particular urgency to it, but it is one of the concerns I've been hearing. What is the level of this happening, and what's our protocol for responding to when residents take mitigation measures into their own hands and they're doing things that might cause unintended consequences for other neighbors?
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Okay.
Great question, Councilmember Aslan, and one that's very real and very difficult to manage in terms of downstream impacts, et cetera.
Well, let's throw that on the agenda for the next time we discuss this. I'd love an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember. All right, with that, we will move on to the next agendized item, which is our general public participation. Do we have anyone at this time? All right.
No, Mayor, we do not.
Thank you. Then we are down to our agenda item number 8, which is the informational items to, from, Mayor, Council, and City Manager, and future agenda item requests. I'll start on this side of the room with Councilmember Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to request the city manager at our next meeting when we discuss COVID update and the re-entry plan. If we could provide a space for discussion in terms of the commission's meeting with potential hybrid or in-person ability for the commission's meeting.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, please do.
Which commission, are we talking about all commissions in general, council member?
Yes, Mr. Clifton, because I've heard from quite a few commissioners, because I have 3 commissions, and also with other commissions from other commissioners from other commissions that I don't liaise with. It's just a question of what is the city's directive on commission meetings in terms of going back in person or perhaps a hybrid model similar to the council meetings.
May I ask one more question?
Of course.
Are you hearing in those discussions a preference to have hybrid meetings at the commission? I would assume that would be the case.
Yes, Mr. Clifton.
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving and advance happy birthday to Vice Mayor Daggett.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you. I have a question for council and staff. Our meeting scheduled December 21st is looking very light. And I'm hearing that a lot of staff may be out of town. And I'm wondering if it's possible to push those 3 items to another meeting so that we may be able to have that night off and spend it with family for the holidays. Thank you.
We are at your pleasure if you'd like to have a quick discussion of that now, whatever council would like to do.
Actually, if you're going to cancel a meeting, you have to put it on an agenda to cancel a meeting.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Would you like us to schedule this as an agenda item to talk about canceling that 12/21 meeting?
Sure. That would
City
be...
Manager and Mayor, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I have my hand up, but this is Rick Tatter, Management Service Director. We do have the airport parking ordinance that has been advertised through the 60-day notice that it would be on December 21st. So that could be a conflict that I'm not sure how we would resolve that. If anything, we'd probably have to delay it, which would delay the implementation of all that. something we gotta watch out for. Plus, the second read of the other ordinance will be coming at that point.
Thank you for the update on that. I wouldn't have thought of it. Well, how about at this point? Well, we can have a further discussion if it's agendized for discussion for potentially knocking off there. But in the interim, could we just make sure we are not adding anything to that agenda? And if we do have that meeting, it should be able to wrap up in less than an hour with just a second read on a couple things.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Allow us to work on this internally. We will get the matter slated for an agenda discussion. By the time we have that discussion, we'll have more answers at the staff level.
Sounds good. Thanks for bringing it up, Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you.
McCarthy.
Well, thank you, Mayor. The only thing I'll mention is that I attended the Pedestrian Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Transportation Commission, and we spent about an hour and a half talking about pedestrian and bicycle crossings at the new Butler and Lone Tree intersection. Interesting discussion. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have 3 fairs, a couple I threw on just last week, but an additional one as well. But after our discussion from last Tuesday regarding potentially placing in apprenticeship requirements for our public contracts. Additionally, so I can read it correctly here, regarding our potential legal violations of permittees as grounds to suspend or terminate building permits or public construction contracts. This is something we can look into, but just wanted to give you a heads up. And then the third is that we have, as a city, got a recent human rights scorecard for our treatment of LGBTQ plus and other metrics. And for about 6 years running, we have gotten an 88 out of 100. Whereas other cities in Arizona have gotten 100. So I'm going to propose a fair to do a review and potential policy changes that could help us improve our scores that have remained stagnant for a number of years. Ms. Salzberg.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can just jump in really quick. We actually have that discussion slated for January 11th, I believe. So
excellent.
You are ahead of the game, and we can
we can discuss it then at the time we're discussing the scorecard?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, well, some of these things look like, wouldn't be a huge lift for us to make sure we're putting in proper protections and policies. So thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, with that, those are the 3 I wanted to mention, and I'll pass it along to Vice Mayor.
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Shimoni.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things. A few of us were at NACA's new location ribbon cutting last week, and it is so awesome to see their new spot and see the excitement around that new facility. I was able to tour a new living house effort, which provides safe, clean, affordable housing alternatives, offering pathways to a healthy, productive lifestyle, promoting self-sufficiency in our town, and very proud of their efforts in the community and very excited about what they got going on. Last Friday, I did also attend the ADOT board meeting and submitted a public comment, which was very, I think, well received by the board, although they didn't engage. I did have a follow-up meeting with staff, our staff, ADOT staff, along with the district engineer for ADOT's North Central District, Audra Merrick, today, and Councilmember McCarthy was able to join me along with Miles from Flagstaff FMPO, and basically heard some really good news that they are looking into cutting back the width of the lanes on Milton, some from 12 feet to 10 feet, and others from, I think, 12 feet to 11, but ultimately generating 3 feet that are going to go towards we're not calling it a bike lane yet, but it's where bikes and peds are going to be towards the margins of the road. So that's great news, and that's something they're doing as a last-minute adjustment to their bid, which is going out this Monday. very excited to be working on that with that team and grateful to all of our staff that's been part of that conversation. They're also looking at the intersection that Councilmember McCarthy brought up last Tuesday. Audra did tune into our council meeting, by the way, and she heard all of our conversations. So I want to express gratitude to this council and to Rick Barrett and his team for having that conversation with us, and to Audra for listening and taking action with her team. But they're looking into the intersection of South Plaza Way and seeing what they can do to better stripe that for public safety and pedestrian needs. So just a very small but big success story that just shows how much influence we as council members have in impacting change if we just engage, bring people together, speak up, and continue to do our work. It's just exciting to be a part of that. And then Mountain Lion had a board meeting yesterday, and we discussed NAH, the hospital, and their new plans, and talked about maybe implementing like a tax district to help pay for the cost of a bus line that would go out to that research center or the location. And they seemed open to that, and we'll be continuing to work through that with NAH leadership. So thank you to Councilmember Sweet for your service on Mountain Lion's board with myself. And then lastly, or almost lastly, Elevate Pre-K had a feasibility and sustainability discussion this morning, of which myself, Mayor Deasy, and Councilmember Salas were able to attend. And if others were able to be there, I'm sorry if I'm not calling you out, but I saw Councilmember Salas and Mayor Deasy, and just impressed with their efforts, and very impressed with the amount of folks involved and the conversations they're having. And special thanks to our city manager for being a part of their efforts as well. And then lastly, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Happy holidays. I did want to mention that although my family does celebrate Thanksgiving and always has, we've always made it a point to talk about the injustices around the holiday and the struggles that certain populations have with this holiday. So wanted just to take a moment to air that out here in my capacity as a council member. But enjoy the time with your family, enjoy the time off, and see you all very soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Aslan.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh, Councilmember McCarthy.
Just a quick follow-up to some comments that tie into what Mr. Shimoni and what you, Mayor, said.
We're getting some glary eyes from the city attorney.
Are we getting into a discussion?
No.
Okay.
Trust me on this. I think it's going to be just fine. I just wanted to mention that this is about LGBT rights, that Councilmember Salas and I attended an event on Friday, I believe it was. Saturday. It was Saturday. And we presented a resolution signed by the mayor recognizing transgender rights. And I will say that I had an opportunity to talk to some transgender people, which is something I don't think I'd really experienced before. And it was very eye-opening and a very positive experience. And I think they really appreciated it that we, as the city council and the mayor, recognize the harassment that they've put up with and the rights that they have. People are people. End of discussion. Did I do okay?
All good.
Sterling approved. All right, with that, City Manager, do you have anything for us? All right, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.